Chapter 4605. Even the most difficult memories passed away in those extreme years. Two completely black eyes, as in the cycle of reincarnation, reflected the past death of Jian Wushuang. Don't look into my eyes. With your little experience, it's easy to get lost in the hallucinations. The shadow of the black water robe, who claims to be old, reminded in a deep voice. Sword Wushuang awakened from the mud-like memory, and Shuangyu sweated. It's too weird, it's too scary. What kind of existence is he? Boy, don't try to figure me out, I can easily see your thoughts and thoughts. Lao Zun drew a smile on some sickly pale face. Jian Wushuang quickly abandoned the distractions and kept his heart firmly. You are the only guy who has appetite for me after my old friends, so I plan to help you once. Lao Zun said indifferently. Help once? How do you help? Jian Wushuang was confused, somehow. Lao Zun's figure suddenly turned into a puddle of black water and fell into the polar sea, then quietly condensed behind him, without the slightest white eyes looking into the distance. I know from your consciousness that the universe in which you exist seems to be suffering a calamity, and everyone has no means to catch it. It has completely fallen, and the distance to complete destruction is only a matter of time. Now, I have decided to help you to completely reverse this original inability to return to the end, and everything you have seen before will never happen again. The sudden foreign aid did not make Jian Wushuang lose his mind. He groaned for a moment, looked up and said to Lao Zun, "What about the conditions?" Lao Zun raised his mouth slightly. There are two conditions. The first condition is very simple. It completely destroys the hostile universe without leaving any soul. Jian Wushuang's heart trembled. This first condition was obviously his third option before. Why, this is beginning to regret it? Lao Zun sneered. Jian Wushuang did not speak, staring at him tightly, already determined. I promise you, what is the second condition? Lao Zun smiled with satisfaction. Once agreed is a contract and cannot be changed. As for the second condition, I will say it based on the completion of the first condition. After that, he flicked his fingers, and a drop of black water drops fell on the right arm of Jian Wushuang. Jian Wushuang hurriedly opened his sleeves and saw a tear-like drop of water on the wrist of his right arm. It seemed to feel his worry. Lao Zun added, "This is a part of my mind, used for communication between you and me, and does no harm to you." Jian Wushuang was slightly relieved, but he still had vigilant thoughts about this extremely mysterious person. No longer paying attention to Jian Wushuang, Lao Zun turned slowly and stared at the dark and extremely polar sea that flowed horizontally. I'm afraid no one would have thought that I would go back to see you one day. Old Palace Master, hurry up. In the infinite expanses of imagination, the Taoist bathed in blood and exploded with his body, and finally the most terrible blow broke out. The mountains and rivers were crushed into powder by this blow. However, this blow that was blown with his body was easily destroyed by the 8 desolates. The monstrous palm directly crushes the mover. The 8 desolate and exalted lords who exude demon-blooded blood all over the body, I do not know what secret method to use, have already taken that step and reached the semi-ancestor level. Well, I have long noticed that your motivation is impure. I originally intended to save you a life. I never wanted you to die instead. He dispelled the blood stains, and Bahuang Xuanzhuang hated his lips. Then he cast his gaze on the blood-stained, dying Dao Yan, and there was a drool in his eyes. Bahuang, this is not something you can touch. A cold voice of biting sounded from behind. Bahuang Shuzuan hurriedly promised and ran to the zombie. The black mist condensed, and when he came to Dao Yan Supreme, give me your feelings, and I will spare you for the time being. He coughed a ray of divine blood. Dao Yan looked at him calmly. All my things belong to the divine universe. Even if the body is dead, you don't want to get half your fingers. Why bother? Give it to me now, and I can still let you die decently, otherwise I can only kill you first, and then draw out your feelings inch by inch. Xing was suspended immediately, and the naive hiding behind him fell on the deck. Dao Yan was not afraid, and his face was despised. So, you can just take it? Yen Yi stopped talking and reached out to Dao Yan's chest. What's your feeling? Biddy was directly puzzled. Dao Yen laughed supremely. It's ridiculous, I said this. My thing, you, the virtual universe, don't want to be half-finger. No longer speaks, Yen Yi rises up like countless snakes tearing Dao Yen into pieces. At this point, Dao Yen is supreme, falling into the universe. In the large spaceship of Nua, there was only one naive. This seat is already like this, you still do not spare. Is it true that this seat has no backhand? In the cage of divine power, 70% to 80% of the zombie gods were restored, and his eyes looked at the 8 desolate emperor in front of him coldly. Only you now? The 8 wilds who belonged to the peak of the ancestral class swelled with a scornful smile. Even if you are at the peak, you are no longer my opponent. Give me your feelings to me, I makes you look better. With their noses fused together, the zombie still fights for the sleepy beast. When Ba Huangshuan looked cold, he raised his palm and drew to the zombie god. OM. The extreme sea trembled, the water level suddenly rose 1,000 feet, the waves were surging, and the 2 bodies came on the tide. Sword unparalleled. When the zombie opened his pupils, a feeling of being born dead came to his heart. He didn't want to, and yelled, sword unparalleled, Tao Yen supreme, and Elder Qianshan have died in their hands. Noisy! A look of disgust flashed in the eyes of Bahuang Shuzuan, slamming his palm on the zombie. A divine power came swiftly, and it was about to hit the Badlands. Bahuang Shuzuan was forced to retreat, the sword had no stature, and he lifted the Taro sword to his right arm. Laugh. The entire right arm of Bahuang Shuzuan was cut off by the roots. Before he could scream, he was kicked hundreds of feet away by Jian Wushuang. Put away the Tai Luo divine sword. Sword Wushuang looked and did not look at the zombie god. The body swept towards the cosmic boat. He had a strong bad feeling. Hidden in the dark fog, he looked at Xiang Jinshuang calmly. Let's meet again. Fart less. What about Elder Daoyan and Elder Moving Mountain? Jian Wu's eyes were so cold that his palms were already on the hilt of his waist. These 2 guys? Bite shrugged slightly. I just wiped them out. The pupils shrank suddenly. Jian Wushuang roared, You it! Thousands of swords rise up against the sky, pointing at one. Emperor Jiutian. Chapter 4606. The magnificent Tianmen emerged, and one of the giant fingers of the sky sank heavily. Wandao normalization, transformed into the most common one, cut to 1. Presumptuous. Yen Erliang, who hadn't said anything, drank a bit, even surpassing Yen to meet the sword. 1 red, 1 black and 2 bright lights collided as if training. It was even too late to be proud, and that bland sword-likeness instantly ripped off the second light of the 2, and went straight away. The pupil shrank, and the great terror between life and death made Yen air dull on the spot. How could he not have thought that he would only tear his defense with his own strength for the half-step invincible supreme swordmaster? On the broken sky, the giant finger of the heavenly gate was pressed down at the same time. This polar starfish field completely shattered, the more distant stars burst, and the earth eventually shattered. Boom! Sword E aspect, and Tianmen giant fingers pressed on the body of Baitu. The polar daylight covered everything, and the hurricanes swept the remaining broken earth. I don't know how long it took until the burst finally dissipated, and Jian Wushuang was able to see everything in front of him. The broken void, intact Yen Zi, holding Yen Zi almost torn from the middle, stood in place. The blood of God couldn't stop flowing out of the wound. Apparently there was more air out and less air intake. Sir! Ba Huangshuan rushed forward, and although his arms had grown back, the whole man was extremely embarrassed. Raised his hand and sent the dying Yen air in his arms to the hands of Bahuang Swordsman, and Yen Yi slowly walked towards Jian Wushuang in the void. With every step he took, the void sank and cracked. A supremely weak force is like a giant sea galloping, that is a breath belonging to the semi-ancestor class. Jian Wushuang also waited. Jian Wushuang, you shouldn't have existed. If you are not his disciple, I will definitely try to sue the emperor to the emperor and include you in the organization. Unfortunately, if you are his disciple, you must be kept. A slightly regretful voice resounded from under the mask of Bit 1, and the breath that originally belonged to the semi-ancestor level went up a step, and finally condensed in that mysterious realm. You have to be in a natural posture, like a monster, and you can kill the ancestral realm in a half-step invincible state, but you know that the most important thing is the genius, who is more genius than you. The sound of Byte E sounded 9 days and 10 places. He has taken that step completely and reached the ancestor level. Promoting the ancestor to the semi-ancestor level is a natural sound that can never be made up with hard work. That's the real puppet. Only the luck of the universe can be used to break through that puppet. The fortune of the virtual universe is almost dry up. How can it possibly give birth to another ancestor? The true horror virtual power condensed as if it drove the entire virtual universe towards the sword without a double pressure. The ancestral breath almost appeared, and everything became a foregone conclusion. Sword unparalleled. Death in my hands is your ultimate destination. Countless red phantoms turned into 6 big hands, gradually condensed behind one, and the rules of the heavens and the earth were drawn on each palm. And Jian Wushuang still stood in place. His eyes gradually changed from the initial complexity to calm. The zombie eyes curled up in the cage of divine power were crumbling. Let me out, let me out. If it was before, Jian Wushuang could only close his eyes and wait for death. But now, everything has changed. A huge dark red arm, grasping the power of the rules of heaven and earth, crushed the sword without a match. Later, there were 2 arms, one on the other and one on the other, like the sun and the moon, and they were also suppressed. The stars and stars are all broken, and even the void that represents nothingness begins to collapse in a large area under the ancestral atmosphere. Looking at the 3 arms that cover the sky, Jian Wushuang just swept back and forth without worrying about the danger he was in. The zombie in the divine power cage is already crazy, hitting the cage crazy, trying to escape. Feeling the warmth coming from his wrists, Jian Wushuang looked behind him. The old respect came from the tide, with his right hand on his back, and a left hand holding a water stick transformed from the sea current. The tip of the wand touched the void, and countless small, dense, dark and black mansions suddenly rushed and proliferated in all directions. I do and know how many polar regions of the starry sky are surging. The huge waves rise into the sky, and a black virtual image is transfigured. The 3 arms behind Bit 1 swept across eternity with an unstoppable ancestral breath. But when countless miles of frost-like blackness covered the void, hundreds of thousands of miles across the eternal arms seemed to have been cut off from the rules and disappeared with the speed visible to the naked eye. At the same time, the black virtual image transformed from the polar sea came out of the polar sea and smashed into one of the 3 arms. Boom! The blast burst through Huanyu, and the crimson arm was directly smashed by the black virtual image, and 2 successive punches, the 2 light and dark arms that were stagnated in the void, were also broken. The black virtual image was full of ripples, and slammed into the one that stood in the void. Devouring and humming, instead of stepping back, he rushed up. At the same instant, the 3 huge arms remaining behind condense into a sharp giant spear, stabbing into the chest of the black virtual image. Time seemed to stagnate. Thousands of crimson cracks emerged from the heart of the black virtual image, and then completely collapsed, returning to the polar sea current. The Byte figure re-emerged, and the ancestral breath was still vast and long. A scarlet one-eyed man turned from Jian Wushuang's body to Lao Zun, revealing a dreadful color. At the same time, a strange card with a metallic luster appeared in his hand. Jian Wushuang's heart trembled, and the dimensional reduction blow of that weird card impressed him. If it wasn't for the last shot of Gap Supreme, he would have no way to escape the weird energy in that card. Just when he was about to remind Lao Zun to be careful, he found that Lao Zun's figure had disappeared sometime. This strange energy wave, although weak and abnormal, should not be a product of this universe. The low voice quietly rang from behind Yi's ear. He almost thought about it, and threw the card directly behind him. As the tide emerged, Lao Zun's pale palm gripped the card directly. With a click, the card that even the invincible Supreme couldn't help was crushed easily by the old Supreme. Into powder. biting a pupil and shrinking, the regular arm behind him pierced directly towards Lao Zun's heart. The water waves flow and the body dissipates. When his body reappears, he is eating the front. Tell me, who gave you this kind of thing, and who has the energy stored in it? Lao Zun's voice was full of irrefutable majesty. At the same time, his palm was stretched forward, and a beam of black light emerged, which directly tore a regular arm behind bite. It. Eater went crazy, and he has never been so humiliated since following the emperor. Chapter 4607. At the moment, this guy who doesn't know where to come out actually ruins the regular arms so lightly. That's the rule he just got when he was promoted to the ancestor. When he successfully promoted to the ancestor level, he had absolute self-confidence and fought against the virtual with the card from the emperor. But now, all of his arrogance and whole cards have been stamped on the soles of the foot by this sick-like guy. Say, don't say it? Lao Zun's voice was cold, and he reached out his hand, flicking the regular arm behind him, like a breeze, and then broke one arm. Eat a complete madness. The last remaining regular arm, carrying an endless ancestral breath, turned into a giant spear and pierced the Lao Zun. Lao Zun showed no contempt, and only stretched out in his right hand to gently touch. After a while, a fine, dark crack emerged from the forefront of the regular arm and then quickly spread. Just a breath, it broke the regular arm. I can't believe that even if he is fighting against Su Shen now, it's enough to shout hard, and coupled with the endless pile of cards, I am afraid that even Su Shen has long been out of sight. But now the sudden emergence of the sixth sister-in-law just disperses his ancestral strength with one finger. Who is he? The chill rose from the bottom of my heart, and I no longer hesitated, urging the breath in the origin of my life directly. The void is completely collapsed and cracked, with one bit as the center. An indescribable terror force surges suddenly, as the terrifying dragon builds a very special energy field in the void, and Lao Zun is also in this fierce surging special in the energy. He avoided the sharp edge and stood back behind Jian Wushuang in a flash. Special red mansions and black light shuttle through it, quickly sketching a mysterious virtual image. The runes that exude faint fluorescence hovered around the virtual image, and a black gold mantle leaf moved with the wind. It was just that the face of the imaginary image was completely hidden in the fog, and it was not real at all, only an imperial crown emerged through the fog. Seeing this imaginary image, the weakest one went down to his knees. I've seen Lord Eater. Jian Wu's figure shook, looking at the virtual image of the crowned emperor crown, and suddenly realized something. The eternal arrogance of that year, overwhelming the geniuses of the peoples with their own strength, and created the Tai Luo Supreme of the Tai Luo Sword Code, was killed in the hands of the emperor of the name. However, this virtual image of the crowned emperor crown only existed for a moment. The virtual image reached out and swept around, including Yen and Bahuang Su Zun, and then quickly dissipated. From appearing to disappearing, there is only a few dozen breaths, and then everything returns to calm and nothingness. A drop of cold sweat flowed out from the horns of Jian Wushuang, and the barren breath emanating from the virtual body was different from the ancestor, but similar to the ancestor. Even the old-fashioned ancestors, such as the gods of the earth and the gods of imagination, have never had the idea of making Jian Wushuang tremble. Only two people let Jian Wushuang have this kind of thought. One is an old respect who came out of the dark and extreme sea and came from the tide. The other one is the one that the emperor invited to come out of. The emergence of these two existences made Jian Wushuang suspect that the true top of the universe is not the ancestor. While Jian Wushuang was thinking wildly, the old man beside him sighed slightly. It seems that the rules of this universe still restrain me quite a lot. Jian Wushuang was silent, just that Lao Zun pointed a moment ago, and the suppression of the ancestors was already a thing he could not imagine. When he reached the mouth, he swallowed again, and then Jian Wushuang swept towards the broken spaceship. The small childish figure curled up in a corner, eyes full of panic. When he saw Jian Wushuang, he immediately rushed over and wept in a low voice. The smelly chess basket, Elder Dao Yen and the elders who moved the mountain, they are all dead. Jian Wushuang's eyes were dim, and as soon as he returned from the polar sea, he had realized that their breath had completely dissipated. "One bite, I will kill you." Swordless eyes sink like water. I want to go home and never want to stay here again." Big tears slipped from the naive eyes, and everything that has gone through in recent days has almost made her on the verge of collapse. If it wasn't for sword warriors, I'm afraid she would have the body disappeared. Jian Wushuang nodded. "Okay, let's go home and go home now. It's time to set off and your mission should start." Lao Zun's figure appeared on the deck, reminding Jian Shuangshuang. Jian Wushuang did not speak, even if there is no reminder from Lao Zun that revenge that has long been accumulated in the heart, it is time to start. Now that you have launched this war of catastrophe, you also need to be aware of the consequences. Leaving the fragmented polar starfish field, the dilapidated spacecraft quickly shuttled through the major star fields. It has been in the virtual universe for 2 years, but it seems like a moment. The battle along the way has made Jian Wushuang grow a lot, and the half-step invincible state has been completely stabilized in this battle. The rapid howling wind blew the hunting robe of Jian Wushuang's robe sitting cross-legged on the head of the universe boat. He took a thumb-sized seed from his arms and nurtured it with divine power. That is the last source of life left by Daoyin Supreme, which may regenerate the mind after millions of chaos eras. What Jian Wushuang can do now is to be careful and nourishing. A jasper-like tender bud was slowly drawn out, and Sword Wushuang laughed. What people fear most is not the unknown darkness, but the hope is gone, there is no dawn. The magical universe is like this jasper bud, and the fire remains, how can it fall forever? She lost all strength and became a zombie like a normal person, looking at Jian Wushuang in fear and horror. In his body, the deepest source of life has planted a life restraint belonging to Jian Wushuang. Since then, his life is completely in the hands of Jian Wushuang. Unless swordless twin zombies study its billions of chaos, it will be subject to checks and balances. The old respected sitting on the top of the virtual universe boat, from the moment he saw the naive, he became interested, and sometimes changed various shapes to tease the naive. Helpless today, in addition to being close to Jian Wushuang, the rest are treated like flood beasts. Lao Zun can only give up. After a month of patrolling, Jian Wushuang finally came to the 23 cracks again. Waving his hand to kill nearly 20 ordinary vanity guarding the enchantment, this spaceship of the magical universe has finally left the virtual universe. The enchantment ripples, and the cosmic boat stops at the most marginal level of the divine universe. Howling winds are raging, and even ordinary supremes can hardly stay in this environment for too long. Jian Wushuang glanced back, then urged the spacecraft, and rushed away in the direction of the sad land. Chapter 4608. The bleak star field is still there. If there is no war between the two universes, I am afraid that this kind of marginal zone will not have anyone at the end of the extreme time. As the spacecraft moved forward, the subtle imagination of force flowing in the dreary star field still made Jian Wushuang frown. Has anyone in the virtual universe started to enter the vicinity of sadness? With this in mind, Jian Wushuang started to feel uneasy. The disciples of life in the land of tragedy and sorrow are one of the salaries of the divine universe. If the existence of this organization is here, the consequences will be disastrous. Thinking of this, Jian Wushuang no longer dared to stop, and immediately drove the cosmic boat to rush to the tragedy. After sprinting for more than a month, Jian Wushuang slammed into the group he didn't want to see. A black suit and black face armor, showing only a red eye, is a sign of phagocytosis. At this moment, the total of 4 people rushed from the direction of the path of tragedy. The head of the group, after seeing this dilapidated cosmic boat, immediately froze in place. Just when Jian Wushuang was lifting his divine power and preparing for a fierce battle, the members of the 4 phages turned into 4 lightning bolts, bypassing the spacecraft directly, and then swept away in the direction of the virtual universe. Lao Zun, who was sitting on the top of the cosmic boat, just opened his eyes and took a look at the place where the tissues left, and then continued to sleep with his eyes closed. Just, let's go like this? Jian Wushuang was so confused that he didn't stay too much, and continued to sweep away towards the tragedy. After more than half a month, the spacecraft finally arrived at the place of tragedy. Looking at the more familiar passageway, Jian Wushuang was relieved, but when he looked at the Emperor's ancestral site not far away, he thought deeply. Those members of the Bite organization did not enter the land of tragedy. Did they enter the Emperor's ancestral site? The one who has been promoted to the ancestral level is related to this Emperor's ancestral site? After a little thought, Jian Wushuang drove the cosmic boat into the land of tragedy. There are no more weird ghosts and crying long songs in the dark channel, just like the ordinary to the ordinary channel. Passing through the final enchantment, Huang Huang's prestige came into his eyes. The divine power contained in this site, which is now called the burial land, even the old statue lying on the top of the cosmic boat bounced up in an instant. Even the pure black eyes are full of bright colors. It's such a blessed place, I really didn't expect it. Lao Zun murmured softly. Jian Wushuang didn't hear what Lao Zun was saying. He landed in the spacecraft early and swept deep into the burial ground. There are tens of thousands of dojos in all sizes, which are spectacular. On each side of the path, there is a disciple of the life shrine practicing meditation. At this moment, the Great Axe Supreme and the Heavenly Supreme are teaching a group of disciples who have just been promoted to the Supreme Divine Realm how to proficiently regulate their own meridians. King Jiujia, who was wearing a white shirt, was lying in his dojo, together with Lan Lan, supervising the disciples for laziness. The Bloodwave Supreme, who had been in retreat until Jian Wushuang left, was already awake, and she continued to practice her perception in front of thousands of dojos. This kind of supervision task has been done for several years by King Jiujia. When he inadvertently yawned, a young ranger in black and black robe appeared in his eyes. Sword unparalleled? The king of Jiujia directly ejected, and when he saw that this guy was really Jian Wushuang, he hugged his arms with open arms. Hey, lightly, it's not like I haven't seen each other for hundreds of years. Jian Wushuang smiled, but his arms were hugged heavily. No matter when and where they are, the King of Nine Calamities and the Palace of Life have been regarded by Jian Wushuang as an integral part of life. Loosing the sword unparalleled, King Jiuzai looked at it carefully and then smiled. The realm has advanced a lot. I knew I would follow you before I knew it. Jian Wushuang smiled. During my time, let's see nothing happen here. King Jiujia said, nothing happens, everything is normal. In addition, I have good news for you. Over the past few years, more than 90 disciples have broken through the ultimate and reached the supreme state of God. Jian Wushuang laughed. It's really good news. There are nearly 400 supreme people, which is enough to affect the whole battle. Between the two of them, the Great Axe Supreme and the Heavenly Supreme have also discovered the return of Jian Wushuang and are happy to run. The Master of Wushuang Palace, the late Axe and Tentacle are late. The two arched their hands, a little more excited between their eyes. I've seen the Master of Wushuang Palace. Lan Lan laughed. Lung Wushuang also rushed forward, facing the lingering person. She couldn't help it anymore, and opened her arms and hugged Jian Wushuang tightly. Worried you, ma'am? Jian Wushuang patted his back frostily. Forbearing the tears in his eyes, Lung Wushuang said, I will go with you in such a dangerous place in the future. Jian Wushuang smiled bitterly. It's up to you, it's up to you. Kneeling on the deck, looking through the gap in the railing, the young child stared blankly at the warm scene with red eyes. What's the matter, little girl? Is there any sad thing? Lao Zun did not know when she appeared next to Juvenile, and her dark pupil reflected her figure. The naive hurriedly rubbed his eyes. No, it's sand in my eyes. Lao Zun shook his head helplessly, looking at Jian Wushuang not far away, and looked at the naive, then said lightly, Let's go, little girl, we should go on. Blood Supreme has broken through Invincible Supreme. Has that step been taken? Hearing the determination of the Great Axe, Jian Wushuang nodded. Invincible Supreme jumps to the semi-ancestor level, even harder than the semi-ancestor level to enter the ancestor level. From life to two, it is never difficult, it is rare to have one from its roots. And moving from invincible to semi-ancestor level is born from the source. That is a completely unimaginable path. You can see yourself from the perplexity, self-awareness, and self-awareness. Each step is a process of continuous denial and remodeling, just like the nirvana of Phoenix, and finally proves one's own way. And Bloodwave Supreme has successfully entered the semi-ancestor class. In this way, just our Shrine of Life has 2 semi-ancestors, and the high-end combat power of the Void Universe already has the power of 1 battle. The Supreme Axe analyzes that in his subconscious, Jian Wushuang has long been regarded as a semi-ancestor. But what should Su Xin do to get out of the seal? Tina Supreme reminded in a timely manner. It seems that time is coming soon. After listening to the words of Supreme God, everyone was silent, just an ancestor of the false god, and without the checks and balances of the gods of the universe, who can resist? Chapter 4609. The ancestors, whether they are the divine universe or the void universe, are at the top of their existence. That state has long been beyond everyone's imagination. All the details of the divine force universe, but between the hands of the virtual god, are enough to be destroyed. If it was the previous Jian Wushuang, I'm afraid I still feel helpless about this problem, but now he is no longer the original him. Yishali Town's semi-ancestors ate 2, and they can destroy 1 point of the virtual god. As long as it is not surrounded by many semi-ancestors, it is also the home of the divine universe. Jian Wushuang confident can stabilize the high-end battlefield. And the only variables, the virtual gods and the Byte organization, now also have corresponding opponents. Jian Wushuang turned to look around. An old man in a black water robe, slowly carrying a childishness, with a special atmosphere like the entire polar sea behind him, full of endless power. The old man who signed the contract with Jian Wushuang from GG Starfield and did not know the origin has already stood with Jian Wushuang. Feeling the special and undeniable energy fluctuations, although the Giant Axe Supreme and others did not show hostility, they also became cautious. At the same time, the Supreme who was still meditating opened his eyes. The horror divine power belonging to the semi-ancestor class rises to the sky. The next moment, the figure will reach the front of Jian Wushuang, and the look of Lao Zun is extremely cautious. Extreme blood is his own. Jian Wushuang smiled bitterly, and then he briefly said how he would meet Lao Zun. However, Jian Wushuang passed the incident of Lao Zun easily killing one. After all, this situation, would say that it would mess up the minds of the disciples. After listening to Jian Shuang's words, the giant axe bowed his head. Since that being said, he is not a virtual universe, it is a person who belongs to my magical universe. Lao Zun did not speak, and naturally stood with Jian Wushuang behind him. What's this again? Giant Axe looked puzzled to Juvenile. Jian Wu's eyes were dimmed. It's the ancestor of Feng Tian's ancestor. It's called Juvenile. The atmosphere was suddenly dignified, and for a while everyone was deeply disgusted with the evil actions of the virtual universe. Master of Wushuang Palace, all disciples in the Palace of Life, listen to the dispatch and never die. Bloodwave Supreme arched his hands on one knee. Tens of thousands of sounds sounded at the same time, shaking the sky. Jian Wushuang smiled and looked steadfastly into the distance. Okay, get together, go back to where we belong. With a plan in place, the disciples of Life Shrine in the Path of Tragedy began to board the spacecraft and were ready to leave. Standing at the head of the first cosmic boat, Jian Wushuang looked at the still burial place of God, with gratitude in his eyes, and then bowed deeply. The familiar scene gradually went away. The 10,000 square dojos were lifted and lifted by the power of the Lord, and they remained as they were, as if they had just left for a while and would soon return to their respective dojos. Every disciple in the Palace of Life knows that most of them will fall on the battlefield on that side. But they still looked back, just like doing a trivial thing. This is their responsibility and their mission. After leaving the place of tragedy, Jian Wushuang's eyes looked at the Emperor's ancestral site. After hesitating for a moment, he finally gave up. The fallen divine universe must not be delayed every moment. Shushan still hasn't returned. Jian Wushuang decided to completely kill the living force of Shushui in this period. In 3 months, 3 cosmic boats began to approach the extraterrestrial battlefield from the extreme edge of the divine universe. As it gets closer to the extraterrestrial battlefield, some magic shards breaking in the void, and the wreckage of the supreme divine realm begin to appear. Countless blood of gods converge into rivers, floating in the void, and they will continue to flow for tens of thousands of chaotic eras until they slowly become nutrients and are absorbed by the universe. On the battlefield outside the territory, there is no longer a fight against the broken starry sky, only the supreme wreckage floats miserably in the void. It wasn't until the base camp that was originally occupied by the gods of the gods that Jian Wushuang felt the surging force. From a distance, it's just the vanity of the outside inspection that is no less than 15, let alone the rest of the vanity that has occupied the base camp. Forbearing the anger in his heart, Jian Wushuang signaled that the cosmic boat was docked far away, carrying Lao Zun and the pool of blood, and quietly touched the base camp. Regarding Jian Wushuang's business association, Lao Zun never refuted or denied, as if he was going to do what Lao Zun did. Even if the sword is the lowest in the trio, it also has the strength comparable to the semi-ancestor level. In the face of such a group of vain princes that are not repaired by the 3 marks, it is simple to kill. But if you want to do it quietly, there will be some difficulties. When Jian Wushuang was preparing to release the season control of Tai Luo sword code, the familiar barren atmosphere escaped from Laozuan. Dark crystals emerged from the void and instantly covered the outer periphery of the base camp like frost. A patrol team of 14 people seemed to be mired in a quagmire and stopped silently. The breath was frozen, and the quiet surroundings seemed to hear no wind. The sword was unparalleled. After greeting, he rushed over first and waved his palm. The immense power was like thunder and punishment, and the 14 virtual respects were crushed into powder. Even if he had been promoted to the semi-ancestor level, after seeing such an understatement of Jian Wushuang and killing more than a dozen virtual respects, he couldn't help but breathe a sigh of cold air, and his heart was hot immediately. In just 1 year, Jian Wushuang can directly suppress so many vanity. If it is 1,000,000 years later, will he accomplish the next cosmic and lead the divine universe out of trouble? 1,000,000 years is just a retreat for them, but it has endless possibilities. If Bloodwave Supreme knew that long ago, when Jian Wushuang nearly killed the half-ancestors with their own power, I am afraid that my jaw will be dislocated. After eradicating the patrol, the 3 bodies quietly entered the base camp. In the magnificent palace, at this moment, there is a lot of staggering, and nearly 100 strong forms are gathered here, talking and laughing. Sitting at the top of the giant man, 6 marks on his shoulders flickered, hugging 2 shivering goddesses of the universe, laughing loudly. And in this hall full of virtual respect, sitting at the table next to the giant head, the power was surging. The handsome and elegant middle-aged man, a Confucian shirt, and 2 long dragon horns between black hair, illustrates his identity as a dragon. The heavenly divine power swirled around him, but at the moment he was happy with the vanity of the temple. If you see the scene, Jian Wushuang will surely find that this handsome and elegant dragon middle-aged man is the 3rd-generation blood of the dragon family, the brother of the dragon of the evil dragon family, in the invincible and supreme dragon Cypress. Chapter 46:10. The incense burner in the central hall of the Great Hall was smoky, and the drunken 6-marked venerable drunkard kicked the table, twisted the ugly and weird figure, and began to dance in the hall. Long Bai sat in his place, a flash of disgust flashed in his eyes, and was soon covered by a smile, and he applauded from time to time, as if watching a beautiful dance. The giant man sitting on the top laughed again, straightened the niece sitting on his left leg, opened his arms to the left and right, and twisted the maid's head down. Blood splattered, and the giant man unscrewed the head of another niece in accordance with the law, and the 2 heads fell into the hands of the giant man like walnuts. Long Bai. A low, murky voice sounded from the mouth of Juan. The 200 nieces you sent are really good. Now I've enjoyed them almost, you see. Long Bai heard the words and arched with a smile. Just follow the ambassador's word, and Long Bo will offer another 300 virgins every day. The giant man known as Shangshu heard the words and nodded with satisfaction. It's so good. I will wait for Shushan to return in the future. I will ask the Shushan for help and leave your dragon clan still in charge of the original jurisdiction. Long Bai's eyes flashed a happy look, and he quickly arched his hands. Thank you, Lord. The dragons are willing to do their best to open up the territory for the virtual gods. Shangshu made Ain chuckle with a strange tone. I heard that your dragon clan only breeds with your own clan. The women in the clan are all beautiful and healthy, and you are in good shape. If you don't do the following, you bring 10 women in the clan. A burst of anger appeared in his eyes, and Long Bai almost wanted to kill the sham in an instant, but stiffly put up with it. I don't understand the meaning of Shangshu. Long Bai almost gritted his teeth. Shangsu made Ain smile with a smile. As long as you bring 10 dragon women to this seat, the original jurisdiction of the dragon is unchanged, and you can choose the 7 domains for your own use. The inherent pride and dignity of the dragons were thoroughly humiliated, but the palms hidden under the sleeves of the Long Bai robes slowly released. Then he changed the arch of arrogance. It's a big deal, and Su Longbai goes back and asks his ancestors for their opinions. After saying this sentence, Longbai sat back in dismay. The impeccable dragon leader who besieged the Temple of Life with all major forces, but now like a dog, begging for peace. He vaguely felt that the opinions of the ancestors were completely wrong, and they were totally wrong. But can everything be saved? Sitting on the top of the head, the imagination is extremely open, and this race known for pride can be humiliated by itself at this moment. The sense of conquest is far faster than the slaughter of the star domain. Shang Su sat on the back of the chair with satisfaction, wondering whether it was too much wine or too much Ain, and his head began to feel dizzy. Everything began to spin in circles, overlapping shadows appeared. Shangshu tried to shake his head, and glanced at the center of the giant hall. I don't know when he stood in 3 figures. Whoever is coming, quickly report what happened. Shang Zus halberd fingered. However, it was not answered. With each step of the figure dressed by the ranger in front, the hall secretly scored a point. The staggered crowd of vain respects, as if frozen, were motionless. Shangshu finally became awake, because he found in horror that his body could not move anymore. A blood shadow suddenly appeared in front of him, and the roar of Baju became the last voice heard by Shangshu. Miscellaneous. Bloodwave Supreme stretched out his palm, and the semi-ancestor's divine power easily smashed his head. The blood mist gushed and the hill-like figure collapsed. Everything seemed to play in slow motion. Long Bai watched this scene completely, and his heart was completely cold. You disappoint me so much, you dragons disappoint me too. The sound of regret sounded, and a figure did not know when it appeared in front of Long Bai. Long Bai slowly raised his head. The cheek that was so familiar that he could no longer be familiar, was now truly printed in his eyes. Sword unparalleled. The eyes of looking at that face were full of regrets. Somehow, the resentment in his heart disappeared without a trace, replaced by shame and guilt. Every ancient race that has existed since the floods and chaos, have your inner pride been eaten by dogs? Jian Wushuang glared at each other, holding Long Bai's collar directly to pull him up. Long Bai reacted, and a sense of shame rushed into his heart. The divine power belonging to the invincible Supreme directly drove the sword unparalleled by several steps. Insane swordsman, can you humiliate my dragon clan? Long Bai said angrily. Upon hearing that, Jian Wushuang smiled coldly. It is never outsiders who humiliate you, but yourself. The stigma of being despised caused Long Bai to lose his mind for a moment. He directly summoned a virtual image of his destiny, of mighty gold dragon, carrying supreme horror, and slammed into the sword. As long as Jian Wushuang is killed, the most disgraceful aspect of his dragon tribe will be unknown to outsiders. Boom! After the golden dragon virtual image hits the sword unparalleled, it is hard to get half an inch. Jian Wushuang responded with a palm, and then suddenly twisted, and the virtual image of Jin Long was broken into powder. Long Bai himself was hit by a sledgehammer, and his body receded into the wall. Withdrawing his palm, Jian Wushuang stepped in front of Long Bai, his eyes sinking like water. Then he slowly stretched out his palm, facing Long Bai, and opened his bow from left to right and pulled up his big mouth. It was louder than it sounded, as if it sounded enough to crack the sky, echoed in the giant hall. After all the virtual lords in the giant hall were resolved, the Supreme Master of Blood and the Old Master stood side by side, watching Jian Wushuang twitching and waving intently. Blood! Shui Bo Supreme pursed his lips. The old respect echoed and nodded. I do not know how long it took before Jian Wushuang stopped beating, throwing his palms and drying the dragon's blood full of hands. And a head swelled into a basket, and his face looked like a dragon cypress with a dye shop on it, and finally he knelt down on the ground. The dragon cypress that almost even had its original shape drawn out was dull, but murmured, I was wrong, I was wrong. Taking a deep breath, Jian Wushuang said, It's not your fault alone, it's your entire dragon clan's fault. I'm going to discuss it. Long Bai suddenly looked up, Let me go, I will definitely persuade my ancestor when I go back. You are not allowed to stay, but you are only a sacred place of the holy universe who captures the divine power of the universe, dedicated to the torture of the virtual universe. I will not be able to keep you. Jian Wushuang said lightly, as if the final judgment had been set. Long Bai heard that, as if evacuated all his strength, he sat paralyzed suddenly. If this is the case, then please help me bring a word to the ancestors of the dragon clan so that they don't go on wrong. Man is dying and his words are good. The bird is dying, and its song is also mourning. Chapter 46:11. Jian Wushuang nodded, then took the palm as a sword and took off Long Bai's head. The generation of dragons is invincible and extinct. The breath of the dragon enforcer, though far-reaching, never appeared. Master of the warrior's palace, shall we move on, or will we continue? Bloodwave Supreme stepped forward and asked. Waving his hand to incorporate Long Bai's head into the Chenkuan ring, Jian Wushuang groaned, Now that the divine power universe has fallen, continue to rush forward, I am afraid that it will run into the army of the virtual universe. We are here to wait for reinforcements. Reinforcement? We still have? Bloodwave Supreme was uncertain. Jian Wushuang nodded. If the reinforcements don't come, well ask. For example, now that the dragons have returned to the virtual universe, we will go to ask for one or two. What if they ignore us? Shuebo Supreme asked. Jian Wushuang calmly said, If the cliffs are clear or if they are sensible, I will not hold them to surrender. If they openly express their position of surrender, then they will be killed. Bloodwave Supreme felt coldness between the neck and neck, and the feeling that Jian Wushuang gave him was just following the words and saying that killing the entire family would definitely fulfill his promise. Out of the giant hall in the base camp, Bloodwave Supreme led more than 10,000 disciples of the Life Shrine to the base camp and settled down. Jian Wushuang injected his own two ancestors, Tianmen and Tianmenjiu, into the stone that can hold everything, and gave it to the Supreme Guardian of Bloodwave. At the same time, he first cast Zingohe. It was poured into Nashi and handed over to the Great Axe for safekeeping. With these three styles, Jian Wushuang is confident. If it is not for the ancestors, even the half-ancestors will have to hate the spot. In the base camp, he left the Bloodwave Supreme, and guarded by the Giant Axe Heavenly Supreme, so if there is a crisis, he can definitely support the Sword Wushuang back. Entrusted to everyone, Jian Wushuang took Laozuan and set off on the way to the dragon. The land of the dragons is so vast that it almost occupies the largest area of stars in the entire ancient divine universe. They enjoyed the most perfect resources, but they surrendered first in the War of Catastrophe. Jian Wushuang did not know how many star powers had surrendered, but there was one calculation, and it was time to liquidate. The oldest flood star field is the core star field of the dragon family. Only when the people reach the supreme divine realm can they continue to practice and live. It is rumored that the Wanya star field contains the most pure core of the divine power in the entire divine universe. During the day of cultivation, it arrived a century on Earth. The sword unparalleled is straight to Wanya starfield. On this journey, the sword has no eyes, and nearly half of the star kingdom is either destroyed or exhausted, or it is still resisting. Ordinary monks without strength can only desperately wait for the monster that breaks in their respective star fields. Going all the way, Jian Wushuang killed all the way. On the battlefield, which had only trace-level virtual respect, now there is a steady stream of star-level virtual respect like ants. Looking at the evil deeds they have created, Jian Wushuang has long shown no mercy to them, and waving his hand is to destroy the stars and traces. Until coming to Wanya Starfield, Jian Wushuang had no idea how many monks in the Void Universe had been killed and how many starfields had been saved. At this moment he was full of anger. This oldest and vastest star field shows no sign of invasion, and it is very peaceful. Who dares to break into the forbidden area of the dragon race and leave quickly to avoid death? From time to time, Long Wei to the towering front door emerged, as if driving away flies, slap on Jian Wushuang's body. Okay, Great Majesty. Jian Wushuang smiled angrily, and Tai Luo's Excalibur was already in his hand. Today I will see when your dragon clan can hide. The vast divine power is completely condensed on the Taro divine sword, and the divine power floating in the universe is concentrated under this sword. Broken. The roar is like divine punishment. The sword that has already exceeded the rules has directly caused the sky to collapse and the starry sky to collapse. Only one sword, magnificent. A sword that stood up to the sky, straight to the towering main gate of Wanya Starfield. As in the last days, the main gate collapsed in an instant, and the sword swept across the earth, directly overturning the mountains and rivers, turning the river and the sea, and changing the sky. 1,000,000 miles, nothing more. Who did it? The roar of the endless Long Way sounded, a dark golden dragon standing up against the sky, and a star-sized dragon. I looked at Jian Wushuang. The dark-colored golden dragon's left arm was cut off by Qi Zhen, and the colorful blood of the dragon's blood flowed endlessly. He was originally stationed at the main gate of Wanya Starfield and spent every day indoors. Where would anyone think that someone would call the door like this? If he is not alert, I am afraid that a dragon head would have to be cut off. But he kept his restraint as much as possible and did not release the overbearing Long Way. He is not a fool. He can destroy Wanya Starfield 1,000,000 miles with one sword, and he can easily cut off his arm. It is by no means what he can counter. Jian Wushuang put away the Taro magic sword and said obliquely, "The Lord of Life Jingu Palace, Jian Wushuang comes, let your ancestors roll out. You are wanton." The dark golden dragon can no longer bear it, and the pride of the dragons makes him rush to the sword unparalleled. With a cold hum, the invisible sword intentions emerged quietly, facing this dark golden dragon, chopping off it. Without any sound, a huge dragon head staring at each other was in the hands of Jian Wushuang. The dragon corpse without its head was planted into the void with the last inertia. Carrying the dragon head in this way, Jianshou's sword carried Lao Zun and broke into Wanya Starfield. The monstrous dragon's blood was sprinkled on the ground, and the dragon's corpses fell tragically on the mountain stream. Jian Wushuang no longer knows how many dragon descendants have been killed, and the dragon heads in Chenkuan Ring have already piled up a bunch. When the descendants of the dragons who came under containment did not intercept and kill them, Jian Wushuang put away the Taro sword in his hand. "Take me to see your old ancestors, if not, then I will visit one by one." Jian Wushuang said in a cold voice. His body shook, and the countless dragon blood fell. All the descendants of the dragon clan have trembled, and no one dared to step forward to intercept and kill WWW. Novel. But spontaneously vacated away. Jian Wushuang didn't speak, and his body was galloping. Mountains and rivers gradually disappeared, replaced by a statue of a dragon standing on top of the sky. This is the forbidden area of the dragons. Since the beginning of chaos, only Swordsman has set foot here. On each dragon statue, there is a breath of extreme beauty, which belongs to the semi-ancestor class. And in this statue of the dragon, a bluestone-paved boulevard leads directly to that side of the Temple of Heaven. Divine power was dissipated, and the sword Wushuang walked towards the avenue step by step closer to the Zhitian Giant Hall. The dragon statues on both sides seemed to come alive, and various extreme dragon breaths built a yellowish atmosphere and swept towards the giant hall. Jian Wushuang grinned. "Visit the Temple of Life, And look at the budding mouse generations, come and see. Chapter 46:12. The voice of blessing of divine power, like Hong Zhong and De Lu, resounded completely for 9 days and 10 places. Jian Wushuang was not afraid and said louder than, "Visit the Temple of Life, and look at all the budding rats, come and see." Nearly 100 golden dragons tore the sky, spontaneously blocked Jian Wushuang, and the dragon's breath rose skyward. After only a brief glance, he found that all of these golden dragons were actually supreme divine realms, and even more sneer. And among these nearly 100 golden dragons, a dragon whose scales scattered colorful mang shadows bowed down from the sky, and the Tyrannosaurus surged, "Shut! You know this is the forbidden area of the dragon clan, and within 3 days of death, we will confess our death. I will not pursue it." Jian Wushuang glanced obliquely, holding the palm of his hand directly and holding it firmly. At that moment, the colorful dragon entangled in the air, as if held by his neck, fell into a miserable shape. The Tai Luo Excalibur was already in hand. When the sword Wushuang was about to decapitate it, the clouds suddenly collapsed, and a huge amount of dragon's breath fell. Even Jian Wushuang had to avoid the sharp edge in the dragon's breath flowing down like a waterfall. The sacred dragon breath spreads the sky and shelters all the descendants of the dragon race. At the same time, a huge red gold eye chased through the clouds and looked at Jian Wushuang. 10 minutes away, leave quickly, this is not where you should come. The extremely old voice seemed to wake up from his deep sleep, warning him. Jian Wushuang dismissed with a smile, every land in the divine universe is accessible to the people of the divine universe. Why can't you hear? And who rules outsiders not to enter? What if I don't go here? Ignorant child, since you are looking for death, then I will fulfill you. The red gold eye wheel in the clouds suddenly condensed, and the mighty dragon was mighty. A dark golden dragon head appeared to carry the power of the entire star field and appeared on the sky. Jian Wushuang looked up at the Shengwei Jin Long indifferently, and it was already clear in his heart that he had gone through the first war of catastrophe. At the same time, the giant claws covered with ancient scars, like the pillars of Optimus, rolled down towards the sword unparalleled. Lao Zun took a step forward, and the scepter formed by the black water in his hand was about to stop, but was stopped by the sword unparalleled. "Let's do it, I can handle it." After Jian Wushuang said this sentence, the vast divine power rose from his body and ran directly into the dragon and the giant claw. Oh! The energy of the two was enough to destroy the sky and the ground, and the detonation produced directly swept the clouds, and the descendants of the dragons who were gathered together were also detonated from a distance. Both hands were closed at the same time, the stone avenue under Jian Wu's feet had cracked into a large pit, and half of the scales on dragon's claws with dense scars were shattered. Dragon blood spread out of the scales, and then disappeared. Silence, with plenty of time to rest, the dragon's figure hovering over the sky slowly dissipated, replaced by an old man wearing a black gold suit and white hair. I do not know how many long chaos of the chaos period have fallen asleep, reawakened again, belonging to the majesty of the 3 generations of blood. Let all the descendants of the dragon family kneel to the ground. Long Ling stood in front of the main gate of the heavenly giant hall, shining Jinmeng's eyes staring at Jian Wushuang. "I have seen you." The old yet majestic voice sounded from Long Yan's mouth. Jian Wushuang said indifferently, "See, I have seen it naturally, but the situation of meeting several times is as unpleasant as it is now." Long Yan snorted coldly. Before his figure stepped, the monstrous Long Wei squeezed out, "You kill my people and destroy me 1,000,000 miles in the starfield, depending on the dignity of the dragon people?" Jian Wushuang heard a laugh and said, "When will your dragon clan have face? Isn't it that you will only lie in the nest and suppress the rats of the universe? Stand down, look for death." The fury descended like a heaven punishment, and Long Yao slammed his sword at Wu Shou with one palm. The giant claw imaginary tears the space, and the powerful force almost instantly blocks all his escape routes. Jian Wushuang still stood in place, facing the repressive palm. He just pulled out the Taro Excalibur and made a stroke. As the ice and snow melted, the mountains, snow and wind and smoke, the most overbearing dragon's breath seemed to drown in the sea and dissipate directly. Understate that broken Long Wei was broken, and the sword unparalleled stepped towards Long Yuan. As early as the first battle of the Holocaust, it has achieved the invincible and supreme state of the dragon. Now that it is in the forbidden area of Zulong, its strength is comparable to that of the semi-ancestor. But somehow, when he saw this ant-like figure step by step, he suddenly had an inexplicable sense of crisis. However, this absurd idea was quickly thrown away by him. The ants are ants. Anning can shake the dragon? As soon as he thought about it, Long Ling took another step again, and the vast dragon surged up in breath, transforming his life into a golden dragon and slamming into the sword unparalleled. He was convinced that Jian Wushuang couldn't stop the blow anyway. I don't know where the frost, like vines, sprung up to form a magnificent prison cage. Taro Supreme's treasured face, which is chic in all things, emerges behind Jian Wushuang, the wine line enters the throat, and turns into the purest Taro sword, straight forward. The blue stone-paved avenue shattered from the middle and the ground collapsed. The golden dragon that came out of nowhere, when it touched Tai Luo Jianyi, cut it in half from the middle of his eyes instantly. The dragon's breath is broken, and the golden dragon vanishes. Long Yu took a step back, his body and blood surged, his destiny dragon soul was broken, and he also suffered a mild back injury. Facing the earth that was almost plowed, Jian Wushuang stood up and swept straight towards Long Yen. Regardless of rectifying qi and blood, Long Yen also made a move to deal with it. Hui Hong Tianmen doesn't know when it will appear, and one of the giant fingers of the sky suddenly comes from behind the door, rolling down. Dragon Crest, who had already climbed Dragon's Breath to be enough to fight with the semi-ancestors, had the purest sense of repression after seeing the giant fingers above him, making him like a falling ice cave. The ancestral art that can only be mastered by the gods of the universe. I hit my head like this now. The defense that had just risen was crushed directly, and Long Ling even had no time to make a sound, and then completely disappeared into the magnificent miracle. The earth was completely broken, and after the might of God was scattered, a huge pit was left behind. After seeing this scene, the descendants of nearly 100 dragons will immediately come to see it. Lao Zun, standing in place, quietly slammed the black water scepter, invisible ripples like a barrier, directly blocking all dragon descendants. In front of the giant pit, Jian Wushuang whispered, and saw the depth of the giant pit, and slowly raised a figure. The crystal dragon's blood flowed down the wound, which was deep enough to reach the bone. At this moment, the dragon's body shape was already fragmented, and most of the dragon scales covering it had been broken. Looking at this almost dying figure, Jian Wushuang did not rush to shoot, but said lightly, "Do you want to ask why?" Chapter 46:13. Long Yen did not speak, and a pair of dragon eyes stared at him. However, Jian Wushuang's next sentence was to tremble him, as if the most secret things were made public. "Why do you dragons return to the void universe?" A short sentence is like a thunderbolt. Long Yun lips said, How did you know?" Jian Wushuang coldly said, "Because of myself, in the base camp of the extraterritorial battlefield, I saw a person who should not have seen and knew these things." Long Bai. Long Yen seemed to have lost all his strength and lost his soul. Where is Long Bai now? Because of your wrong decision, Long Bai paid the price he should pay. Jian Wushuang said, reaching for a ring of Qian Kuan. Long Bai's lifeless head appeared in Long Yan's eyes. "My brother." Long Xian rushed, but was blocked by Jian Wushuang's wave. "Shuzi, you are going to fight against my entire dragon clan." Dragon sobbed blood and set foot. Jian Wushuang silently, after a long while, said, "I never thought of being an enemy of the dragons for a while, even then and now, I have never thought about that. It's you who pushed the entire dragon race to despair. I thought that surrendering to the virtual universe would save the real strength of the dragons. As everyone knows, the cold of the teeth will be the real disaster for your dragons." Jian Wushuang said coldly, "Everything I do today is to wake you up. Tell me why you surrender." Long Yen receded, his eyes shed tears. Now that the magical universe has fallen and the of the universe has died, you tell me, who can resist the virtual and the virtual universe without surrender? Stupid! Jian Wushuang hated. Did you really know nothing about the cold lips? For half of the living space, you are willing to endure such humiliation. Do you think that the divine power has fallen? Even if you are a dog in the enclosure, will others want you? If you kill canines, they think you will not bite? After that, Jian Wushuang waved his hand and condensed a picture. It was a scene in a base camp outside the field, and Long Bai, who was wearing a long shirt and suit, sat down and looked iron blue. The strange noise of Shangxue sounded. As long as you bring 10 dragon women to this seat, the original jurisdiction of the dragon will remain unchanged, and you can choose the 7 domains for your own use. There was a humiliation and anger in Long Bai's eyes, but he put up and arched. It's a big deal, and Long Bai must go back and ask the ancestors for their opinions. The pride and dignity brought about by the ancients of the dragons were completely destroyed in such a short conversation, and they stepped on the soles of their feet. Looking at the picture, Long Bai sat back to his original place in a desperate state. The heart of the dragon was dripping blood, and the dragon's eternal arrogance was also in this humiliation, completely annihilating the Tao heart. The screen goes to the end. When Long Bai was about to die, he said his last persuasion, "Tell my elder brother, don't go on wrong." "My brother!" Long Ling cried, and the world changed. Holding the head of Long Bai with divine power, Jian Wushuang gently pushed it to Longyu. Even if you surrender to the virtual universe, they will not let you go like this. They will slowly eat away the entire dragon race. Despite the fall of the divine power universe, there is still a possibility of its rise. I don't want your dragons to go completely on this path. Even if it coexists with the divine universe, what is it? This is our glory and a necessary mission. Jian Wushuang said calmly, if the contrary, your best case is to be enslaved, and your enslaved children, will you curse your ancestors who make decisions, be the scum of Hao, the old thief? Long Yen shuddered, and seemed to be unable to bear any more, spitting blood. No longer proud in his eyes, he was old and lonely. You called Jian Wushuang, right? Is that little guy in the Temple of Life? Long Yen slowly spoke. Jian Wushuang responded, yes. Long Yuan nodded, his murky eyes filled with relief. The old man was taught. The next moment, Long Yen suddenly slammed his palm like a knife and chopped his neck. Then a head fell into the abyss of the crater. Volunteer to disperse as a self-cultivating dragonfly, transforming into a golden dragon and slowly falling. Because everything is coming too fast, when the sword Wushuang reacts, Long Yen has already disappeared. Jian Wushuang was silent, looking at the corpse of the golden dragon scattered in the giant pit to repair the dragon's breath, and whispered, giants. Once, ancestors. Hundreds of dragon descendants saw this scene and wept with tears. Jian Wushuang motioned to Lao Zun to remove the barrier, and the dragons in the periphery would go crazy in front of the giant pit and kneel heavily on the ground. Did this trip to the dragon tribe end like this? Jian Wushuang looked at the descendants of the dragon tribe kneeling on the ground, and could not bear the punishment. At this moment, there seems to be a long bell at dusk, and countless yellowish qi rushes into the heavenly hall. The 2 heavenly gates slowly widened, a dim figure waved away, and then signaled the sword Wushuang to come. Without any hesitation, Jian Wushuang and Lao Zun stared at each other, even though they swept towards the heavenly hall. Stopped outside the gate of the palace, Jian Wushuang could faintly see, the obscure figure was a middle-aged woman. The woman was wearing a plain shirt, and 2 left and right arms were entangled with 2 Shenhuang qi. When Jian Wushuang came, she signaled, follow me. After that, the woman first entered the giant hall. Jian Wushuang undoubtedly had him, and also stepped into the giant hall. Stepping in, the ripples symbolizing the enchantment spread slightly, and then returned to calm. The strong dragon's breath permeates every inch of space, and even Jian Wushuang feels the sense of oppression. This giant hall is very strangely arranged. To the center of the whole hall, a giant pillar that seems to border the sky is erected. On top of this giant pillar, There is a red gold dragon that is almost as tall as the giant pillar. Each leaf is twice as large as Jian Wushuang, which is full of pure gold. Meaning, holy dick. The middle-aged woman with her hands full of mysterious spirit, respectfully said, Old ancestor, the guest is here. The huge red gold scales began to move, and the golden dragon entangled above the giant pillar began to move. Xianhuang Qi is even more intense. A dragon head beyond imagination seems to hang from above 9 days, and a pair of dragon eyes is like 2 star fields, reflecting the sword unparalleled figure. And the mysterious yellow air is sprayed from the nostril of this unimaginable dragon. Welcome your arrival. I am the ancestor of the dragon clan. You can also call me Linha. Jian Wushuang's heart shook slightly. He realized that the ancestral dragon emperor in front of him had already surpassed the semi-ancestor level. Chapter 46:14. After returning from a little shock, Jian Wushuang arched his hand. The younger swordsman met the emperor of Linha. The giant dragon's head slowly nodded, and then the spotted Jinmang began to escape from the dragon body. Seeing this, the middle-aged woman hurriedly said, Old ancestors must not. The entire dragon body entangled on the giant pillar began to illusion, and a old man in a plain shirt was gathered. 2 huge dragon horns seemed to confirm his almost endless life. Our ancestor, you should continue to nurse. How can you leave again? The middle-aged woman expressed anxiety. The old man named Linha Dragon Emperor smiled. Anyway, the old man's old illness is not a day or 2, and it is necessary to add some more. The middle-aged woman shook her head helplessly and did not say anything, following the old man. Xiaoyu, you have met the non-dragon outsiders for the first time since that war. Linha Dragon Emperor and martyrdom, the inherent pride of the dragon tribe, was missing from him, as if it were another. The ordinary old man has drawn the distance between the two invisible. Jian Wushuang thought for a moment, and then said, Is this the first battle of catastrophe? It's much longer than that. As if in memory, the Emperor Linha shook his head and smiled. That war was a war between our 3 dragons, phoenixes and unicorns. My old illness was also left in that war. Little friend, do you know that before me, cosmic luck could only have 1 ancestor? Jian Wushuang heard the words and was slightly puzzled. Isn't it possible to have only 1? The Emperor Linha smiled and shook his head. At that time, I was still a youth and my father was the ancestor. However, before the battle of the 3 races, I suddenly did not know where he was, leaving me with an ancestor. Chiyun. At the end of the speech, the Emperor's palm of Linha showed. A unique but more mysterious atmosphere emerged from the dragon clan. With the appearance of that mysterious atmosphere, including the sword dance pair, the divine power in the body suddenly felt a kind of shivering suppression. That was the true luck of the ancestors. The Emperor Linha looked at the ancestral fortune in his hand and whispered, I wanted to appreciate the luck that my father left, but the war between the 3 races followed, and my body was left in that war. Dark illness, ultimate. I can no longer break through the ancestors. Now, Linha Longdi looked at Jian Wushuang and waved his ancestral energy into his hands. He should have a master. Jian Wushuang trembled, almost at the same time as the middle-aged woman. It must be. Old man, that's the foundation of our dragon family. The middle-aged woman hurriedly said, You gave an outsider, what should we do? Shut up, said the Emperor Linha, unpleasant, don't talk too much. The middle-aged woman didn't dare to speak any more, but just forced her to look. The eyes of Xiang Jinshuang almost swallowed him. The sword smiled bitterly on both sides and then firmly said, Senior, this is too expensive. I will not accept it anyway. If you insist on giving it away, I can only refute your face. The Emperor Linha did not make a stand, but said, Little friend, can I talk to you alone? Jian Wushuang nodded in answer, then asked Lao Zun to wait in place. The middle-aged woman glared at Jian Wushuang with a resentful glance, then swept out of the hall. Then, Linha Dragon Emperor slowly moved forward with his sword. I don't understand. After a short while, Jian Wushuang asked. After hearing the words, the Emperor Linha answered the question and asked, Little friend, Do you know why we fought in the battle of the three races, so that the foundation of my dragon race was destroyed, and can't we recover now? Sword Wushuang shook his head. Linha Dragon Emperor eloquently said, that's because the three of us at that time jointly found a heavenly ancestor-level luck. To compete for that luck, war inevitably broke out. As the most powerful dragon among the three races, it should have been easy to get that luck, but my father suddenly disappeared, leaving the dragons in a passive situation. Even so, I temporarily became the patriarch, commanding the entire dragon tribe, pushing the war to the climax. I had already entered that state with half a foot at that time, and I struck the Phoenix tribe, the Kylan tribe and the Unicorn King of Kirin with my own strength, and died shortly afterwards, and my serious illness was left at that time. The war hastily ended. I am still alive, but the serious illness at that time still affects me until now, and I know that there are not many days. The Emperor Linha said that he paused here and then continued, but my dragon clan was so severely wounded that even today it cannot be fully recovered. The descendants of the clan are even more mediocre. So far no one has realized that step. While the Feng and Kirin tribe have already recovered, and I can almost say that the ancestral luck is in the hands of the Kirin tribe. I still have fears when I live. Once I die, I am afraid that the dragon will soon be destroyed. The Emperor Linha showed his bitterness. So surrendering the virtual universe is my instruction. I just want the dragons to have a chance to live, but from now on, I should be wrong. Hearing this, Jian Wushuang also fully understood his meaning, pondered for a long while, and still firmly pushed the ancestral energy in his hand into the hands of the Emperor of Linha. I can't guarantee too much, but for one thing, as long as I'm alive, the dragons can only die on the battlefield. Jian Wushuang's bland words were like vows. When the Emperor Linha heard the words, the dragon's head was instantly red, and he bent his knees to salute, and Jian Wushuang hurriedly stopped it. The old man has accepted the love of the little friend. Today, this luck, if the little friend delays again, I will have no face. Linha Longdi gave up his ancestral atmosphere, determined. Jian Wushuang was dumb, he really didn't want to accept it. After all, he was very far away from the half-ancestor class. So he resolutely accepted it, not to mention the use of his own, but to bear the love of the dragon family first. In this way, it took trouble in disguise to take over the broken things of the dragon and the other two races. But looking at the resolute look of Linha Dragon Emperor, Jian Wushuang could only accept it for the time being, adding the last sentence, "This is just for me temporarily. If there is a timeless arrogance in the dragon family, I will return it." Linha Longdi understood the meaning of Jian Wushuang's words, and there was a gloom in his eyes. I said before that as long as I live, the dragons can only die on the battlefield. Now the two sides of the universe are completely endless, and fighting together is the most important thing to do now. Jian Wushuang said, "I am here this time, that is why." The Emperor of the River heard the words and solemnly said, "From this moment on, all the descendants of the Dragon Clan will let their friends dispatch them to fight the virtual universe to the last moment." Chapter 46:15. Jian Wushuang said, "It's not to be ordered by me. We have the same enemies. The dragon and the Temple of Life can resist each other as allies. A soldier without a general is like a dragon without a head." The Emperor of Linha shook his head, and then gave him a crystalline and round heart-protecting scale, and gave it to him. "All dragons." Jian Wushuang no longer quit, and after incorporating the true order into the Chengkuan ring, he said, "Now that the dragons are back, it is also time for me to return to the extraterritorial battlefield to deploy." Linha Dragon Emperor nodded, and then said, "Little friend, as far as I know, the Feng tribe has completely surrendered to the virtual universe. You must beware of one or two at that time." Jian Wushuang heard his words and frowned. "The Phoenix tribe also surrendered. What about the Kirin tribe?" "The Kirin tribe has been fighting hard since the beginning of the Holocaust. I once sent the descendants of the dragon tribe to support them, but they were rejected." Linha Longdi said. Taking a deep breath, he groaned. "Now it seems that I'm going to see the Feng family again." Linhe Dragon Emperor wanted to stop talking and finally spoke with Jian Wushuang. Walking out of the forbidden area of the Dragon Clan, Jian Wushuang looked back at the sky and finally left Wanye Starfield with Lao Zun. After learning about some ancient secrets and the return of the Dragon Clan, Jian Wushuang's heart was relieved. With the full participation of the dragons, the high-end battlefield can be pulled back almost instantly. The Divine Power universe is not the universe of the Life Shrine, but the universe of all the monks of the people. If there is no other force to join, it will be difficult to survive. Leaving from the Wanye star field, Jian Wushuang immediately rushed to the star field where the Feng tribe was located. Since the fall of the Divine Power universe, the power of the Void universe has almost penetrated halfway, and the downright star fighters have begun to furiously seize it. Numerous star domain fuckingdoms have been destroyed. At the same time, there is no shortage of deadly battles and returning star domains. And the power that symbolizes the power of the universe. Only 3 ancient races, there are 2 surrenders. How can this make the sword unparalleled? It is one of the oldest superstars in the divine universe and belongs to the jurisdiction of the Phoenix tribe. It is rumored that there are 10,000 rounds of scorching sun in the Qishao constellation. Under the light of the scorching sun, the Phoenix carries out fiery nirvana to achieve the supreme state. After traveling for more than half a year, Jian Wushuang came to Qishao star field. On this way, the large and small star fields are more or less occupied by the forces of the virtual universe, except that the Feng and the dragon are similar, and there are no traces of virtual respect. As the front gate of the Qishao star field, 10 suns hung above the star field, emitting a burning flame. Jian Wushuang didn't feel the slightest discomfort. He took out the Tai Luo divine sword, and it was like breaking the Wanye star field of the Dragon Clan. One sword destroyed the mountains and rivers of Qishao. Several phoenixes who arrived came to death under that sword. The only thing that made Jian Wushuang feel a bit troublesome was that every disciple of the Feng tribe would ignite fierce nirvana when he was seriously injured, and then resurrected. After completely solving several Feng disciples, Jian Wushuang strode into the Qishao star field. Who dares to break into the forbidden area? On the crimson sky that was illuminated by nearly 100 rounds of the sun, a phoenix with wings spreading nearly 100 feet covered the sky. Swordless pair of eyes narrowed slightly, and the palm pressed on the handle of Tai Luo began to tighten. However, the imaginary assassination scene did not appear. The huge phoenix carried the momentum of the sun, and after hovering for a moment above Jian Wushuang's head, he turned into a handsome young man and fell in front of him. Are you from the Temple of Life? Jun Youth looked at Jian Wushuang a little uncertainly. Jian Wushuang was slightly surprised, but still nodded. After hearing the words, the Junyi youth did not say more, and he simply tilted his head and said, "Follow me, our ancestors have been waiting for your life shrine for a long time." At the end of the speech, the Junyi youth reverted to the flames of fire, and the supreme divine power rose into the sky, and turned into a flash of fierce horsepower and swept away. Although the Shrine of Life has always been a top force in the divine universe, it has not had much contact with the 3 dragons and phoenixes. At this moment, the Feng clan, who had surrendered to the virtual universe, not only did not care about Jian Wushuang, the master of the Palace of Life, destroying the star field, but seemed to be waiting for the arrival of the Palace of Life, which made Jian Wushuang a little puzzled. Without much guessing, Jian Wushuang and Lao Zun swept deeper along the trace left by the fire phoenix. As we move forward, there will be more and more big days above the sky, until the last depth, the whole sky will be almost occupied by the day, and in a rough way, there will be no more than tens of thousands. Rao is the level of divine power of the sword, and also feels his throat dry. When reaching the deepest part of the Qishao star field, a giant temple covering the sky, which was not much smaller than the forbidden land of the dragons, appeared, and nearly 1,000 phoenix descendants lined up on both sides of the giant's hall, as if waiting for something. The soles of the feet fell to the ground, feeling the blazing temperature that could almost evaporate the ordinary supreme, and the sword unveiled his eyes naturally, the figure of 100 phoenixes circling in front of the temple of heaven. A long chime slammed into the clouds, the 100 phoenixes and phoenixes soared into the sky, and a total of 10 magnificent tail feathers left the stream of flames in the air, shocking. Just spreading his wings, Baizhang Fire Phoenix was almost before the sword was double-sided, and the flames flowing from the feathers almost sprayed on him. But Jian Wushuang didn't panic, just looked at it calmly. The magnificent fire feathers flowing with flames receded, and a beautiful cheek appeared in the eyes of Jian Wushuang. I said, "Why you nerds don't hide? Because of your half-strength invincibility, aren't you afraid that this seat will burn you to ashes?" Although it was a gentle female voice, the spirit of Yingwu spurted out. Under that handsome cheek, the most imaginative, it is an extremely hot body that is half hidden under the great firewife. Wear well and get cold. Jian Wushuang reminded. You see, reading www.Ukanshu. Calm. The savage cheeks of Yingwu suddenly burst into flames. "Oh, you guy, I thought I was a nerd, but I didn't think I would dare to tease me." Jian Wushuang was too lazy to talk nonsense with her, and said directly, "Find out your ancestor, I have something to ask." "Why, do you just think so superficially this isn't the ancestor of the Phoenix tribe?" Junmei woman sneered. Jian Wushuang fainted for a moment. He was never expected. The ancestor of the Feng tribe, one of the top ancient clans in the divine universe, would be such a young and beautiful woman. Another stupid man bewitched by beauty. Aren't outsiders now so superficial? The beautiful woman sighed. "Are you really the ancestor of the Phoenix tribe?" "Natural." Jian Wushuang sneered. "That's good, I'm looking for you." Chapter 46:16. The tailored Excalibur, which can cut off the heavens of all things, came out of the sheath, and the sharp sword reached the neck of the ancestor of the Phoenix tribe. At this moment, nearly 100 Phoenix descendants transformed into huge wings at this moment, and surrounded the sword unparalleled. The ancestors of the Feng family shrank their pupils, then calmed down, sneer, "I thought you were a nerd, but turned out to be a fool. With this half-step invincible and supreme state, believe it or not, I burn you directly." After that, a huge phoenix totem rises from behind the ancestors of the Feng tribe, and the phoenix sings. While this seat is not yet angry, you can quickly go back and call the palace master of your life temple," she said in a deep voice, and there was no doubt in her words. Jian Wushuang said indifferently, "I am the lord of the palace of life." "Just you?" Feng old ancestor laughed. "You are? If you are really, then, with the strength of my sons and daughters of Feng, wouldn't everyone be the master of the palace of life?" Suddenly all the children of the Phoenix tribe laughed. "If you are acquaintances, go back quickly and let your lord of the palace come to see me." She waved her hands, her expression began to be impatient. At this time, a loud drink sounded. "You can't let him go, my ancestor. He just came to commit the crime and killed our 3 disciples." In a flash of time, the fiery flames sprang forth, and the ancestors of the Feng tribe were angry and rushed to the crown. I said why the Chixiao starfield was oscillating. I thought it was an unsightly mess. It turned out that you, a bad guy, had made a ghost. Really looking for death. After that, the fire phoenix totem suspended above the sky, opened his mouth and spit out the flames of extinction. The scent of fire belonging to the semi-ancestor class fell down, and even Jian Wushuang felt a burning sensation. Jian Wushuang did not dare to enlarging, and directly released the 4th season of the Tailu Sword Code. As a result, the unfavorable winter cold frost situation actually dissipated on this fiery land. The bursting flames fell, and the sword flew out without a hit. He waved his hand barely to extinguish the flames sticking to the clothes, and the sword had no double-sided color and began to condense. If this phoenix ancestor used his full strength just now, I am afraid he would suffer a minor injury. In other words, the offensive that broke the winter cold frost just now is less than the 5-point power of the ancestors of the Feng tribe. Folding down the enemy's heart, Jian Wu's eyes watched Shentai. A red gold pattern slowly emerged and began to flow around him. The old respect who had been silently behind him, after seeing this scene, raised his eyelids slightly and then calmed down again. The ancestor of the Phoenix family, who was about to open his sword against the sword unparalleled, began to look dignified, and at the same time secretly muttered in his heart, "It shouldn't be. This boy is obviously invincible and supreme. Why does it give me a dangerous feeling? Pretend to be a ghost." The ancestor of the Feng tribe hummed coldly, then turned into a huge phoenix and rushed towards the sword unparalleled. Golden eyes opened, an invisible blade, Yu Jianshuang's right hand condensed, facing the ancestors of the Phoenix tribe that came with endless power to sink and cut down. The heavens and the earth changed color, the earthquake shook, and the abyss of heaven shattered from under the sword. The sword is stretched for millions of miles, and the mountains and rivers are overturning, and the sun is dim. The Phoenix ancestor who had turned into a phoenix flickered with fear in the eyes of the two pairs of phoenixes. She suddenly discovered that this kid was actually playing pigs and eating tigers. The ancestors of the Feng clan suddenly stopped in the air, and when they were preparing to avoid the sharp edge, they found in horror that all their outlets had been blocked by the pervasive sword. "Damn bastard!" The spiky bird's beak spit out the words. In desperation, the ancestor of the Phoenix tribe grew up, and nearly 100 rounds of sun trembled at the same time, and the blazing sun fell into a sea of fire. The huge phoenix is in this sea of fire, enduring the pain of burning, nirvana fierce. A dash, the shrieking pierced the sky, the fire plume was brilliantly glorious, countless streamers and flames fell to the ground, and a giant phoenix nirvana born with wings spreading the sky was born. Facing the vast sword, there was a round of big sun in Jufeng's mouth, and they collided violently. The redness of Jin Mang was just a moment, and the fire area that had just formed was cracked in a large area. The Jin Mang sword meant not only the slightest loss, but it accelerated the chopping. Old ancestors. Almost 100 disciples of the Feng ethnic group all rushed over, but at the moment of raising their feet, they were blocked by an invisible barrier. Lao Zun raised his eyelids, paused with the Blackwater scepter in his hands, and went silent again. Feeling the fragmentation of the realm, the feeling of lack of skills came back to my heart. The ancestor of the Feng tribe made a last long beep, then closed the eyes of the phoenix. When the vast sword smashed the last sea of fire, the endless power was stopped in front of her. Time seemed to stagnate, and after a while everything melted, snow and ice disappeared. Jian Wushuang retracted his palm and said quietly, "Open your eyes, you are not dead." Phoenix eyes slowly opened, and the ancestors of the Feng tribe reshaped into human figures still hung high in the air, unable to believe that they were alive. Jian Wushuang looked up and saw what should not be seen, and quickly turned his eyes to the side. I wasn't dead." The ancestor of the Feng clan murmured softly, then stared at the sword unparalleled against the ground. With wings spread behind him, the ancestor of the Feng tribe appeared in front of him. "I said, why didn't you kill me?" She gasped slightly, her chest undulating. Jian Wushuang glanced at her and said, "I have the ability to kill you, but I can't kill you now. I need to know an answer." "What is the answer?" "Why surrender to the void universe? With your semi-ancestral strength and in your own territory, it is not difficult to resist," Jian Wushuang said. The ancestor of the Feng tribe was speechless, and squeezed his lips tightly. "I said that I was just surrendering and waiting for the opportunity. Do you believe it?" "I believe," Jian Wushuang replied, simply 2 words. The ancestors of the Feng tribe were stunned, and then the corner of the mouth was raised with a beautiful arc. "I can be the master of the palace of life at this age, and it really has a thorough mind." Jian Wushuang ignored it, and continued indifferently, "Since your Phoenix clan surly surrendered, you will immediately go to the extraterritorial battlefield and the Shrine of Life to jointly defend the enemy." "No problem." The ancestors of the Feng tribe were very straightforward, but the frontier turned around. "But I want to see if the palace master of the Life Shrine has that ability to help the Kirin tribe successfully resist the attack of the virtual universe. If you succeed, I can guarantee that the Phoenix will not die for the magical universe from now on." Really? Really? The ancestor of the Feng tribe firmly said. The deal, then set off immediately. Jian Wushuang nodded and promised, turning and preparing to leave. Looking at the body without any muddle, her pair of phobias flickered, and then she exclaimed, "Wait for me." Chapter 46:17. You have to follow us too? In the vast expanse of stars, the head of the universe boat, Jian Wushuang turned his head and looked at the ancestors of the Phoenix family standing beside him. That's natural. I'm gambling. Of course, I have to supervise you with the past, she said leisurely, and from time to time, sparkling flames floated from her long red hair. Jian Wushuang shook his head and stopped talking. The three groups of dragons, phoenixes, and unicorns are standing up. Each group occupies the oldest and perfect star field, and the distance is also getting more and more distant. Even at the speed of the spacecraft, it can take up to half a year to reach the Kirin family. On the way to the Kirin tribe, the extent to which the kingdoms of the various star domains fell has far exceeded the situation of the previous star domains, and almost no one exists. Traces of virtual respect began to be stationed here in large quantities. Star-shaped virtual men are countless, robbing countless magic resources. Sword Wushuang is naturally not idle. When not delaying his journey, he began mass slaughter of the vagrants occupying the various fuckingdoms. Just as the most ruthless divine punishment came, there were countless killings in the waving hand, even if it was 3 marks, for marks of virtual respect had no resistance at all. The ancestors of the Phoenix tribe who accompanied them all became more and more shocked. What exactly this guy is, obviously is half-step invincible supreme, but his shot seems to exist at the top of the order. This guy, shouldn't he have been passed down by the of the universe? If the ancestors of the Feng ethnic group thought, otherwise how could they easily defeat themselves? After the fierce fire nirvana, the ancestor of the Phoenix family has long been firmly at the top of the semi-ancestor class, and she is also in her own field. She is confident that she can meet 2 semi-ancestor enemies and retreat calmly. However, Jian Wushuang defeated the semi-ancestor pinnacle herself in only one form, and she began to look at Jian Wushuang with extremely skeptical and confident eyes. Thinking all the way, the ancestor of the Feng tribe finally summed up his own point of view. When and where, you can't mess with the Lord of the Palace. Lotu the Kirin family is one of the most vast star domains, and it is also one of the most peculiar star domains. Outside this Luodu star domain, a total of 6 smaller star domains are guarding Luodu. According to legend, under this Luodu town, a chaos spring eye was sealed, and the Qilin tribe inherited the Order of the Sky. They have been stationed here since the beginning of chaos, and continue to this day. The star field was broken, and the corpses of countless monks were floating in the broken void, and the flowing blood filled the cracks. Ahead, shouting and killing sounded loud. The countless vagrants are like the tide near the shore, and like a locust crossing, they flock to the star field that has not been broken for a long time. There, it is Luodu of the Kirin tribe. A 5-marked Su Zun raised his hand and waved his power, crushing several of the unicorns of the Qilin tribe directly into loquat powder. Another 6-marked virtual respect, with a shocked arm, directly bombarded the huge battle in front of a gap, and dozens of 1-mark virtual respect swarmed forward, nearly tearing through. With an army formation of tens of thousands of descendants of the Kirin tribe, the majestic and magnificent, a colorful halo unique to the Kirin tribe shines on the world. But the dark imagination is like one party covering the secret net, and all the divine power is in it. The main gate of the Luodu star field, above the city wall that is as high as the sky, is an old man wearing gold armor, who escapes the power of the gods, and looks at the battlefield that killed Jintian. On the side of this old man, 5 young men with the same armor were standing. Such an endless war has not been known for how many years, and nearly half of the children of the Kirin tribe have died in such resistance. And those virtual vagrants are like locusts. They can't kill as much as they can, and they have exhausted the Kirin tribe. The old man with golden eyes was already dim, and the situation of isolation and helplessness made him wonder whether it was such an endless resistance or surrender. the declaration of the divine power universe fell, and the major top forces were either eagle dogs or perished. The Kirin tribe has come to an end. Kirin, the stubborn resistance, you listen. As long as you return to the virtual universe in full, we can stop the attack and promise that you will still rule the original star domain, and unnecessary resistance will only accelerate your own destruction. The persuasion words wandering in the shattered sky are repeated over and over again. Somehow, today, the old man was touched outside. For a long time, the elder Jin Kai closed his eyes slowly. My son, what do you think? The 5 young armored men standing behind him looked at each other, then firmly said, fight to the last minute. But I want you to live. The old man named Jin Kai looked sad. If you continue to resist like this, the Kirin tribe will annihilate the tribe. Several people looked at each other again, their eyes were dim. One of the slightly immature Jinjia youths said, not necessarily, father. Maybe we can really persist until the day when the eldest brother goes out of customs. The old man named Jin Kai shook his head and slowly shook his head. The hope rising in the eyes was quickly suppressed. It's been so long that he almost forgot he had a son. The Qihong Tianjiao of that Kirin tribe was born by fate, but after entering the closed door when he was at the top, he never came out again. No one knows whether he is dead or alive. The old man Jin Jia couldn't, and dare not pin his hope on that nothingness. Maybe, it's really time to end. Just as he was about to shout the word, Ingjiang, a clear chant suddenly broke through from the broken sky. The flames of light reflected the sky, and a phoenix covering the sky rose, and the wings spread like a cloud of heaven, and countless flames fell from her fire feathers. Like the Joyo bath fire, even if the trace-level virtual respect touches the flame, it is instantly dead, and the intestines penetrate through the bones. As far as I can see, everything is bursting into flames. At the same time, one side of the magnificent Tianmen opened from the back of the phoenix covering the sky, and the red gold Mang he arrived, and an unimaginable giant finger also came. The divine power reflected, the star dome was completely broken. Whether it is a star-studded prince or a trace of venerated princes, they are astonished to see that unavoidable, like a finger of divine punishment. Boom. The world is discolored. www.novel. Void Depression, the extremely huge army of the Void Universe, is directly erased in the presence of this giant finger. Like the dark clouds after the sun appeared, all scattered. The killing sound ceased, and the Su Shi Su Zun who survived under that finger scared his courage and began to flee on a large scale. Cooing, all the children of the Qilin family swallowed their throats uniformly, and they were all shocked in the magnificent sky gate just now. Dispersed the divine power Huang, a sword unparalleled in a black robe, pacing in the void. Oh! Covering the sky, Feng Feng swooped up from the swordless body, and Yinghui's phoenix eyes were full of flames. What are the little fellows of the Kirin tribe still doing? Isn't revenge the most right now? Chapter 46:18. Wake up. In a word, all the descendants of the Kirin tribe on the battlefield came back from shock, looking at the virtual soldier who was almost invincible. There are still 7,000 or 8,000 members of the Kirin tribe, who instantly transformed into their destiny Kirin, and faced the most fierce counterattack of the retreating army of virtual soldiers. The old man with golden armor on the wall of Luodu City, after seeing the scene, his dim eyes light up for a moment, but immediately pressed down, replaced by a complex look. Father, it's the Feng tribe to support it. Still the young Jinjia youth who was a bit immature before, excited, we have been saved. Sixth brother, don't be too happy, their Phoenix tribe is not much better than the fragments of the Void Universe, I'm afraid it's the bad ones. The most stable and strong youth rode. No, the guy in the black robe is definitely not from the Feng tribe. What? Not Feng people, just now I saw him and killed half of the Su Shi army. When did our divine universe exist so horrible? Enough, Majestic's voice sounded from the old man's mouth, and then his gaze looked at the sword Wushuang who came out of the air. Follow me to meet the enemy. Boom! The huge exercise composed of a few dark and ineffective forces directly killed the nearly 50 unicorns of the supreme divine realm. At the end of this retreating army of virtual soldiers, there were two figures hidden in wide black robes. They were extremely horrible, and almost every shot was able to instantly kill dozens of supreme gods. It is just these two people that stiffly prevented nearly tens of thousands of descendants of the Kirin tribe from taking revenge. A dash. With a clear whistle, the ancestor of the Phoenix tribe opened his mouth and spit out a fiery flame toward the two bodies. The power that is enough to destroy the sky and the earth is that even sword unmatched has a slight glance. But the scene that happened the next moment surprised him all. The fiery flames tore the sky and instantly struck the two bodies. However, the two of them held their hands together, and the void twisted suddenly, and the fiery flames poured into the void enchantment. Jian Wushuang instantaneously affirmed that these two men must be a semi-ancestor level horror, and immediately pulled out the Tai Luo Excalibur, struggling to split a celestial sword. But the result was as before. The sword instinct that was originally invincible enough to be equal to the semi-ancestor's full-strength blow, but strangely disappeared when beheaded at the two. What's going on? Jian Wushuang frowned. In the direction of Luodu in the distance, a monolithic Qilin Baoxiang stood up, and the colorful Huameng looked like a big day in the world. The two figures hidden under the black robes saw that the remnants of the army had already withdrawn from the battlefield, and even urged the figures to fly away in the distance. Want to go? Jian Wushuang directly displayed the Tai Luo sword style, and the winter fields were instantly overwhelming. However, it was useless. It just stopped the two for a moment and then disappeared completely. When disappearing, one of the black robes looked back at Jian Wushuang before finally leaving. The arrival of the huge unicorn treasure phase dissipated the darkness of the entire battlefield. Huameng was shining on the body like gentle sunshine, with an indescribable warmth. The giant unicorn treasure retreated, and an old man dressed in gold armor condensed, and behind him 5 tall figures looked like copper walls and iron walls. Meet my ancestors. Nearly 10,000 children of the Qilin tribe kneel on one knee, and their voices are loud and clear. The old man named Jin Kai nodded. His voice sounded loudly, each of his duties. Noah. The 8,000 sons and grandchildren didn't stay for a moment, and in the blink of an eye on this broken battlefield, there were only a few swordless men. Thank you very much for the old man and the entire Kirin family just now. The old man named Jin Kai arched his hand. His voice was not humble, nor was he grateful. Jian Wushuang didn't care. Helping the Kirin retreat was also their responsibility. When they were about to turn around and retire, the ancestor of the Feng tribe beside him sighed coldly. I said the old thing, let's help you retreat from the enemy. Is it just to thank you? Presumptuous, how dare you talk to my father like this? The big young man behind the elder Jin Kai opened his eyes, and Qilin Baoxiang already called out. The ancestors of the Phoenix clan who had only complained completely ignited, and drew a palm in the face of the strong young man directly in the face of the old man with gold armor. Crisp slaps sounded, the strong young man was directly pumped away from the distance, and the remaining 4 instantly released their destiny, and they rushed to the ancestors of the Feng tribe. Enough. A loud scream rang out, and the old man Jin shook his arm and knocked back several people. Shut up for me. Feng ancestor said coldly, don't say I dare to talk to your father like this, even if your grandfather is here, I will call him an old man. Feng Qi, you also shut up. Today you came to reinforce my Kirin tribe. Thank you, but I have suffered so many traumas, and I am afraid I can't receive several people. The ancestor of the Feng family named Feng Qi again said, I do care about those with you. Now that the divine power universe has fallen, I hope that you, the Kirin people, will go to the extraterritorial battlefield with the Shrine of Life and defend the enemy together. It's not a moment of peace. Oh, don't you remember that the Feng tribe returned early? Why are you defending your enemies again now? The old man Jin looked calm, but his words were full of irony. Feng Qi was immediately ashamed. Qishan Lao, you dare to insult me. My plan is to save the strength of the Phoenix clan. The old man named Jin Kai, who was called as Qishan, stopped talking and put on a guest-off appearance. Feng Qi gritted his teeth and was helpless. The sword warriors on the side groaned for a moment and said, "Seniors, juniors are the main sword warriors of the Palace of Life. If the situation outside the time domain is tight, I hope the Kirin tribe can strengthen one or two." Looking at this action, the low-key, not-so-speaking youth, although Qishan does not have much favor, is also very comfortable. After weighing one or two, he arched. If the battlefield outside the territory is tense, the Kirin tribe will be reinforced. After speaking, Qishan waved his hand, and a palm-sized communication order was handed to Jian Wushuang. At that time, the master of Wushuang Palace can use this to contact my clan. Thank you very much. Jian Wushuang solemnly arched his hands, then turned around and left with Lao Zun, without dragging his feet. Feng Qi gave Qishan a fierce glance, and quickly followed Jian Wushuang. "Father, why didn't you let us fight the demon girl just now?" The strong young man covered his red and swollen left face and hated. Qishan looked at the back that had disappeared at the end of the star field, and said quietly, "When you have that strength, I will not stop you. Even if you are tied together today, you are not enough for others." Chapter 46:19. The strong young man heard the words and reiterated, "Sooner or later, one day, I will make the entire Feng tribe pay a price." "Stupid," Qishan glanced at him obliquely. "As long as the Dragon clan isn't annihilated, we can't tear our face with the Feng clan for a day. When the elder brother comes out, everything will be liquidated." One of the young gold armors proudly said, "At that time, how can the little dragon family put their eyes on it? The entire divine universe will be ours." Qishan doesn't have much expression on his face. He seems to be thinking about something. He said for a long time, "Do you think the strength of the sword master who claims to be the master of Shijingu Palace?" A few Jinjia youths looked at each other and looked a little unnatural. The style cast by Jian Wushuang was so shocking that it almost wiped out more than half of the army of Sushur. You know, of the virtual men dispatched by the virtual universe this time, most of the Mark-level virtual princes occupy the majority, but in the style of Jian Wushuang, they are easily erased without any difference. Even the ancestors of the Feng tribe who have entered the semi-ancestor class are far inferior. The sturdy young man said in a timely manner, "Father, I don't believe in the magical power just now. It was that guy who showed it. It must be the mark left to him by the ancestors of the Palace of Life. You must know that he is invincible." Situation. Qishan did not answer, but he already had the answer. He could let the ancestors of the Phoenix tribe accompany him to go forward, and he was willing to lead the Phoenix tribe to cooperate with the Shrine of Life to jointly defend the enemy. Strength? The horrible sight of Feng Qishan is even clearer. If it was not for Feng Qi's unintentional help at the beginning, the Qilin splendid fortunes would also likely pass. After weighing one or two, Qishan said, "Qi, listen, Qi." You two set off immediately, followed Jian Wushuang, and went to the extraterritorial battlefield. The big young man named Qi Ting stunned, and then hurriedly said, "Father, there is a crisis in the extraterritorial battlefield, and the virtual universe is invading. I'm afraid." "Father, if the second brother is afraid, Qi Hong is willing to go on behalf of the second brother." A thin man took a step forward, looking proud. "Who said that I was scared? What did you do when I talked to my father?" Qi Ting was angry, and then arched, "Father, Qi Ting is willing to join the 6 brothers to go to the extraterritorial battlefield." Qishan nodded, his eyes flickered. "Go, let's go to the Kirin family and have a look." The broken galaxy is surging, and countless star domains have become dead domains under the invasion of the virtual universe. I do not know whether it is the turbulence of the two universes or other factors. The starry sky in the divine universe is no longer magnificent and is replaced by endless chaotic darkness. The spacecraft shuttled between them, making Jian Wushuang feel chills. "I'm so annoyed. I knew that this seat should be watching aside how they surrendered, and then kneeled down and begged us." In the spacecraft, Feng Qi, who was hot-tempered, was furious and greeted the entire Kirin tribe one by one in a trick. When she was tired of cursing, Jian Wushuang said leisurely, "Successful retreat from the enemy is time to fulfill your promise." Feng Qi half angrily and half complained glanced at Jian Wushuang. His hot temper could not be vented. Immediately, Feng Qi stretched out her hands and made a long hair from behind her ears. A fire plume with red flames appeared in her hands. This is the real order of the Feng nationality. You only need to hold it. As if I were in person, all the people of the Feng nationality would listen to your call. Jian Wushuang didn't reach out to pick it up. After looking at her, she said, "You can keep it for yourself, then you can take the Phoenix Supreme to the extraterritorial battlefield, and I don't need to intervene in the command." Feng Qi's eyes flowed, and she looked at Jian Wushuang again and again. "You're not afraid that I won't count if I speak, and then I won't close the door?" "Afraid," Jian Wushuang said, simple and clear, and then there was no more. Feng Qi froze, and then stomped heavily, gritted her teeth and cut her teeth. "Well, you have a sword unparalleled, wait for my mother." Afterwards, Feng Qi turned into a phoenix and fled towards the Qishao star field. Jian Wushuang looked at the cosmic boat deck. The big pit kicked by Feng Qi shook his head helplessly. Leaving from Ludu's star field under the jurisdiction of the Kirin family, Jian Wushuang was truly relieved. As the most ancient forces of the divine force universe, returning, together with the Temple of Life and some surviving denominations, are enough to barely be able to compete against the virtual universe. Coupled with the constant addition of some monks, it seems that it is a matter of time to completely expel the virtual universe. In the next journey, the second son of the Kirin tribe, Qi Ting, and the 6 sons of Qi Qin, followed up to show their intentions, and then went to the extraterritorial battlefield with Jian Wushuang. Returning to the extraterrestrial battlefield, watching the familiar environment and the Disciples of Life Shrine patrolling outside the base camp, Jian Wushuang's hung heart really fell into his stomach. Haha, the blood of the Temple of Life, see the master of the Wushuang Palace. The first to feel the blood wave of Jian Wushuang's breath, the Supreme laughed and hurriedly came from the temple. Jian Wushuang rushed to hold the blood wave supremely. It doesn't take much courtesy to have a long blood wavelength. Blood Wave Supreme nodded and promised. The feelings between them were beyond the understanding of others. Qi Ting, who was behind Jian Shuang, was shocked. His eyes were shocking. The vastness of Blood Wave Supreme's undisguised expanse was the breathless semi-ancestor's breath. It seems that this shrine of life really has some details. I have a semi-ancestor, and I have to explain it to my father as soon as possible. Qi Ting secretly thought. Subsequently, the Great Axe Supreme Tianmao Supreme, and Lan Lan, the 9 Calamities, and others brought hundreds of Supreme to greet him. Looking at the eyes of the Supremes who appeared like dumplings, Qi listened and swallowed his throat involuntarily. Although these Supreme backgrounds are nothing in the ancient top tribe of the Kirin tribe, but they are only a semi-ancestor, and they have simply elevated the Palace of Life to another level. In Qi Ting's heart, the Life Shrine has been divided into the same superpower as the Feng and Dragon. Looking at these familiar old folks in front of him, Jian Wushuang played with ease and joy in his heart. Is there anything in the extraterritorial battlefield during this time? The Bloodwave Supreme responded. The big invasion has not reappeared, and some trace-level virtual lords have begun to return to the virtual universe one after another. Jiujie and I, the Axe of the Axe, are standing in the past. Killing the virtual respect is no less than 100. One more thing, that is, more than a month before you return, an army of nearly 50,000 soldiers fleeing from the divine universe. I wanted to intercept a wave, but I found that the realm of the leading two was improbable. Let them go to the crack. Chapter 46:20. After listening to the description of the Supreme Master of Blood, Jian Wushuang nodded his head, and the army of the vanguards who had fled rashly should be the army under the Luodu starfield of the Kirin tribe, who had been destroyed by themselves. After a second embarrassment outside the base camp, the talents entered the base camp. The previous monstrous power is no longer, and it is replaced by a quiet and cowardly divine power. Outside the gate of the long desolated giant hall, all kinds of ancient grass flowers were planted by the beauty-loving female disciples in the Palace of Life. Being supreme by others such as Bloodwave Supreme, Jian Wushuang was not good enough to shirk away and had to take the seat. At this point, nearly 100 people in the temple have been talking for nearly 10 days. Qi Ting and Qi Gong also gradually integrated into this atmosphere. They share a common goal and work hard for it, which makes Qi Ting's inner prejudice start to be a bit vague. This group of guys seems to really die for the divine universe. Really a bunch of stupid guys, shaking their heads, Kirin sighed. Such discussions continued for nearly 15 days, ending with the deployment of Jian Wushuang. He waved his hand to retract the scroll of divine power, and as the crowds began to walk to their respective palaces, the hall was empty. Jian Wushuang rubbed his eyes tiredly, and one day, the Temple of Life began to counterattack and clear away the remaining vagrants in the magical universe. It has been tens of thousands of years since the divine universe declared the fall, and more than half of the celestial kingdoms have been infiltrated by the Sushur. It is also a short period of time to clear up. Fortunately, the virtual force required by the Sushur cannot be obtained in the divine universe, and the strength is more or less affected. The reason why Jian Wushuang cleared up first was to beware of the virtual gods who have not yet returned. He must regulate the magical universe as soon as possible before the virtual gods break through the seal. Fu Jun, let's get tired, rest for a while. A man in white clothing winds the snow as cold as a frost, walking slowly from the palace with a bowl of medicine tonic. Jian Wushuang quickly got up to receive the medicine. Mrs. Lucky. Cold as frost gently shook his head and smiled. As long as it is for my husband, I am unfortunate, so let's drink it while it is hot. Looking at the medicinal tonic in his hands, Jian Wushuang was slightly dizzy. What's wrong, husband? Is there any discomfort? Quickly drink some medicine soup to make up for it. Lung Wushuang said in a hurry. Jian Wushuang didn't say much, sat down with the medicine supplement in his hand, and didn't rush to drink the medicine. Husband. You are too anxious. Jian Wushuang said suddenly. Frosty as frosty, he still laughed. What's wrong with your husband? Jian Wushuang slowly raised his head and looked coldly. Who the are you, dare to impersonate my wife? The face turned cold like frost, but immediately smiled strangely, and his body fled suddenly. The vast divine power surged up, like a giant wave directly enveloping that frosty figure. Jian Wushuang thought about it, and captured it directly from the air. The caught cold frost smiled strangely, and a hoarse voice rang out of his mouth. We've met again. Just as the snow melted, only himself was left in the empty giant hall, as if everything just was his illusion. An enemy attack. The terrible voice resounded from outside the battlefield, and then came to an abrupt end. Sword unparalleled in anger, the body flew out of the giant hall instantly. I saw that in the dark, chaotic and disorderly extraterrestrial battlefield, I do and know when it was completely occupied by the army of virtual soldiers. Like the huge waves rising from the sky, the mighty. Just at a glance, Jian Wushuang knew that this time the army of siege soldiers besieged the base was several times more than Luodu who besieged the Kirin. The monstrous imagination suppressed all the rules of divine power, countless imaginary eyes were red, and only a single order would tear the base camp standing in the extraterritorial battlefield. A number of divine power Hua Mang came to the side of Jian Wu's body, all looking dignified. Damn. When did these miscellaneous come here? Where are the disciples? Xie Wuzhuang anger drank. Jian Wushuang slowly shook his head. The disciples of life in the palace who were responsible for patrolling the periphery were at the highest level of supremacy. In this pre-conspired battle, even the 6 marked virtual honor were not in the minority. How could it be prevented? In the forefront of the army that was facing the sky, 2 bodies completely hidden under the black robe appeared in Jian Wushuang's eyes. With his intuition, Jian Wushuang felt that the figure in the temple just posing as cold as frost was just one of those 2 secret figures. All disciples of the Shrine of Life listened to orders. Jian Wushuang's thick voice sounded throughout the base camp. All the Supreme Divine Realm came forward with me to meet the enemy. The disciples in the Supreme Divine Realm retreated to the giant hall and died to the last moment. Swordsman is already dead. All disciples of the Life Shrine promised in unison, retreating to the giant hall under the Supreme Realm, and together with the sword unparalleled above the Supreme Realm, they met the extraterrestrial battlefield together. Qi Ting felt that she was unlucky, and a resolute face was full of iron blue. Only when he came to this extraterrestrial battlefield, did not even have time to drink hot tea, he encountered the invasion of the virtual universe, and he was anxious to scold his mother. As the second prince of the unicorn Kirin, he died on his own battlefield instead of fighting in this desolate battlefield. He was uncomfortable, but his 6 brothers were eager to look, making him even more depressed. What to do or run now? Qi Ting was thinking about it and was quickly rejected by himself. I fled before the battle. I am afraid that I didn't even step out, and I was given a kill by the poor-looking half-ancestor of his camp. There was no way out from the left and right. Qi heard a gritted tooth, and let go of his life, and swept his body to follow Jian Wushuang. In total, nearly 500 supreme people hovered in the air, facing a nearly 200,000 army of virtual soldiers facing the sky, adding a bit of sadness. The violent raging wind raged, blowing sword Wushuang's hair flying. The old statue wearing a black water robe is like a sculpture standing quietly behind Jian Wushuang. The king of 9 robbers, as before, did not have a half-pointed expression, but the breath of divine power belonging to the half-step invincible supremacy has spurred the peak. The giant axe is so cold, and Lan Lan is as cold as frost, each pushing his own divine power to the extreme, ready to fight against the water. The breath belonging to the semi-ancestor class is surging from the blood wave supreme. This genuine breath makes Qi listen a little reassured. After all, the semi-ancestor class is beyond the presence of the cricket, and you can suppress the invincible supreme by waving your hand. Qi Ting had already made up his mind, and once the war started, he would pull Qi Gong to follow behind Bloodwave Supreme. Just as Qi listened and made up his mind, the army of virtual soldiers suddenly blasted out in front of 2 vast forces, making his entire face green. That's the breath belonging to 2 half-ancestors. When did even the semi-ancestors appear so easily? Chapter 46-21. Kirin is a little speechless. Her proud and invincible supreme realm can play a very small role at present. At the forefront of the virtual universe, the 2 wide black robes slowly looked up, 1 blue and 1 red pair of eyes, condensed on Jian Wushuang's body. We meet again. The 2 black robes spoke at the same time, and the superimposed sound was shocking. Unconsciously, the ordinary supreme had already been affected a lot. The Blackwater scepter suddenly fell, and the ripples directly dispelled the deceptive superimposed sound. The war has already begun. Boom! The vast divine power burst out suddenly, and numerous modeled Jinmang swords were all around the body, slowly condensing to express the Taoist pattern. Just like the real deities came to life, the gilt pattern was plated with a complete charm on Jian Wushuang. An invisible sword quietly condenses from his hands. The territory pointed by Jian Feng is the territory. Killing Zhentian is like a huge sea of darkness splashing into the sky. The first 6 marks of Xuan are about 50. Their potential is even more fierce than that of Shushan. It was just a face-to-face. Nearly 30 ordinary and medium supreme deities of the Palace of Life could not even explode before they died tragically under the hands of Luchan Shuzhen. Such a miserable situation directly caused more than 100 middle-aged supremacy to start a self-detonation and then ran up against it. Boom! Boom! A fierce blast burst the sky, and more than 100 supreme bodies turned into blood mist, trying to block the footsteps of the Su Shi army. However, these blasts only caused some minor injuries to the 6 marked virtual lords who rushed to the forefront, and there was no death at all. The Kinnis pupils looked at the entire battlefield, and then a sword seemed to condense all the power of the ancient stars. Wushuang Kendo, Xinghejianyani, first style, star. Like the most dazzling and magnificent star that was born and annihilated, Jenny broke free of the rules and suddenly came. At this moment, behind the sword Wushuang there appeared his own celestial treasure, with long hair waving in the sky, magnificent and magnificent. The shining golden pattern soared into the sky, and the void was directly sunken. Even the 6 marks told him to return to nothingness. Countless gods and Hermann columns burst from the army of virtual soldiers. Star-shaped virtual soldiers died in a large area, and a little far away, the virtual honor reluctantly fled. Under this shocking sword, nearly 15 6-marked virtual respects didn't respond, and they even turned into fan powder without even screaming. The might of a sword, the prosperity of a sword, directly tore a hole in the army of the Su Shi who was facing the sky. Kill! The Bloodwave Supreme who entered the half-ancestors took the lead, but just shot the 2 6-mark virtual statues and immediately disappeared. The bow of God of the Gods is full of strings, and a total of 24 sharp strength shots are shot out, instantly clearing a trace of virtual respect. The giant axe is like the ancient power in chaos. Holding the axe to carry out the most straightforward, opening the sky, each swipe of the giant axe is enough to take away a few digital honors. King Jiujia is still indifferent, just like the purest snowdrop above the snowy mountain. Every time he takes a shot, he will simply take away any enemy in front of him, whether it is a 5-mark virtual honor or a 6-mark virtual honor. Jian Wushuang can easily kill 6 marks in an invincible half-step, so why can't I be the king of Jiuzhai? One type retreated to the nearest 6-mark vanity, and the 9 kings of white fluttered, waving his hand to destroy the magical powers. The last moment of the 6-marked Su Zun was still a flower in front of him, and the next moment his head rolled down from the neck. The 9 calamity kings who left the road in the empty space were all in one, and the 6-marked virtual respect that moved his head was crushed into powder. Lan Lan and Lung Rushuang joined hands, and reluctantly dealt with some 5-mark vanity. From time to time they killed Shan's 2nd-mark, 3-mark vanity. Maybe it was infected, maybe it was for the sake of life. Qi Ting has already called out the Kirin treasure, which belongs to the invincible supreme peak, so that the 6-mark vanity in the same realm is afraid to look at it. In addition to being as powerful as the dragon, the Kirin tribe is their own inherent healing effect. The Qilin Baoxiang behind Qi listens to emitting colorful Hua Mang. Under the protection of this Hua Mang, the remaining medium and supreme of the Temple of Life recovers his injuries at an extremely fast speed. Carrying the power of the mountains, he directly destroyed a 5-marked virtual smashed god. The 6 youngest brothers of Qiting, Qianggong, shook the sky. The depression that has been shrunk and unwelcome to the enemy in the Luodu starfield of the Kirin tribe has leaked out at this moment. Together with the invincible strength of the invincible supreme realm, Qi Gong and Qi Ting rushed to the forefront and massacred. God's blood stains the sky, the world is crying, and the star field is tearing. At this moment, whether it is the virtual universe or the divine universe, all have red eyes. Stars are not afraid of death, they are inferior, and hundreds of people hold together, and the virtual explosion caused by the joint force is enough to make the ordinary supreme body fall. The disciples of the Shrine of Life were already deadheaded, and started to explode as early as the beginning of the battle. They knew that their strength could not effectively kill the higher traces of vanity, so they found the right time to rush into the group of star monks and blast them. Each self-detonation was enough to take away nearly 1,000 star-level virtual soldiers, and countless dead bones fell into the broken void. The sad song of heaven and earth. Jian Wushuang has long been integrated with the invisible sword in his hand, and each kind of vast sword can easily tear the siege of the Su Shi army. Lao Zun stood behind him, shaking the black water scepter in his hand, and freezing all vanity near the sword Wushuang. When the last violent explosion burst through, nearly 500 of the Supreme Master of Life Shrine died, and none survived. They eliminated their own bodies and consumed nearly 50,000 star monks in the Shu Shi army. The army of virtual men who had covered the sky finally broke through a huge wound that could not be made up. Another sword was cut off by the vastness of the sword, and the 2 black robes like ghosts emerged from the army, quietly suspended in front of Jian Wushuang. His eyes are light and powerful. You reading www.Akanshu. The invisible sword in Kam's hands instantly bombarded the secret of two. The sword that easily annihilated Eater 2 disappeared strangely before the two figures. A crack enchantment surged between the hands of the two. Naturally, this enchantment absorbed the sword ingenuity of the sword. Junmei is like Tianshan's cheek without any expression, and the corner of Jian Wushuang's mouth is slightly curved. Can't you eat it? I will let you eat slowly. Ancestral art. The heavenly gate is extremely rampant. The magnificent heavenly gate opened, and the giant palm of the sky that was enough to confront the true shadow of the virtual was sinking and sinking. Feeling the unrivaled coercion from the broken sky, at this moment, both the virtual universe and the divine universe stopped. Everyone looked up at the coercion in the sky. Give me the punishment of God. Chapter 46:22. Many of the stubbles who have retreated from Luo are dazzled by this scene, and their bodies are shaking like sieve. They wanted to escape, but were terrified to find that everything was too late. The magnificent red gold gods shine like 100 rounds of big sun shining together, dispersing the chaos and darkness in the extraterritorial battlefield. That style, which is based on the ancestral power Heaven Gate, is independent and extremely powerful. It has absorbed the charm of nearly 10,000 sacred soldiers in the land of tragedy and incomparable power, and even destroyed the true shadow of the virtual god. The prestige of breaking through all things surpasses all the previous coercion. Nearly 1,000 handles of magical soldiers emerged from the illusion, into a town to kill and seal off, and lowered endless power. All the soldiers of the Shishir army hurriedly backed off, and some of them retreated slowly and were immediately destroyed by the Wegner into powder. And the two weird black robes standing in front of the army of Sushir did not take a half step back, watching the sinking divine might. They joined hands, and a crack enchantment appeared again. This time, the Fisher enchantment is like a mouth of blood, directly facing the vastness of the mighty power. Oh! The might of the soldiers enough to crush the true shadow of the virtual gods was absorbed slowly when they hit the Fisher enchantment. Everyone on the Shunli universe's face was fiercely sinking. That almost reached the top, even the six-marked vanity, and even the semi-ancestor level, could be destroyed at this moment. The perimeter of the crack junction quickly bulged, absorbing all the energy little by little. The army of vagrants who had fled rashly attacked again. There are 6 marks of virtual revered arms, and a virtual explosion roars lon and cold as frost. An arm covered by gold armor blocked them in front of them, crushing the virtual explosion directly. Be careful! Qi Ting retracted her arms, looked at the two of them, and rushed to the front again. At this moment, everyone is dead-headed, and no one has escaped from the battlefield. Even Qi Ting is completely crazy. Before he dies, he will draw a few extra respects. It was like the crack enchantment of the mouth, which finally wiped out that complete Tianmen pole, which was completely swallowed up. The battlefield outside the territory darkened again. The two secret figures raised their heads at the same time, 2 blue and red eyes fixed on Jian Wushuang. Let's talk to ourselves, we will keep the whole body for you. The bizarre overlap sounded through the mouths of the two. Jian Wushuang's red golden eyes gradually became clear, and his lips narrowed. Really? The next moment, the crack junction closed, but it suddenly rose up. But in a short time, it became a huge pile, and there seemed to be something in it that wanted to break free of the bondage, and frantically struggled. Retreat quickly! The two closest secretive figures immediately urged the figures to retreat, and the army of virtual soldiers who were in a state of encirclement. Somehow, when they saw the huge pile of void rising, it's too late. Thousands of trillions of red gold beams broke through the fissure bounds, according to the extraterrestrial battlefield. Infinite powers burst with a huge amount of potential energy. Nearly 100 traces of vanity in the nearest place were too late to even scream, and they were directly transpired into green smoke. With a wave of his hand, Sword Wushuang directly propelled the few people in the divine power universe, and the speed of light receded. The mighty power that burst from the void like a galaxy waterfall swept through. Even the 6-mark vanity has died out. Seeing such a miserable scene, the two mysterious figures that retreated quickly stopped abruptly, facing the sweeping divine power, completely releasing the breath belonging to the semi-ancestor class. The tragic situation in Luodu, the Kirin family, must not be staged again. The extraterrestrial battlefield is collapsing, and a crack that almost splits the void into two halves appears. The endless imagination turned into a screaming skull, protruded through the crack, and collided with the Huang divine might. The destructive detonation is that even the 6-marked virtual Zun can't bear it. The ordinary virtual Zun who is far from the center of the detonation opens his mouth and vomits blood, and the star monk who is in a worse state is shattered and stunned. The people guarded by Sword Wusho, even as strong as the blood, could not help but his heart beat faster and pale. Qi Ting only felt a sweet throat, and a ray of divine blood overflowed from the corner of his mouth. He hurriedly swallowed the divine blood that was about to flow out. At this moment, both the Shusher camp and the divine camp were affected by this devastating explosion. Jian Wu's eyes calmly looked at the center of the explosion. It seemed that what happened next he already knew. The rays of the polar day dispersed, the sky of the extraterrestrial battlefield was completely shattered, and even the void was gone, leaving a scar that was permanently irrecoverable. The cracks dissipated, as did the glorious sky gate. And in that unrecoverable silent void, the two were almost blasted into bones and stopped in place. The flesh was torn, almost becoming the two figures of the blood skull, but his eyes were still staring at Jian Wushuang. Even more strange things happened. The two blood skeletons surrounded each other with arms, but they fused into a skeleton shape. He puts on his black robe again, as if he is the master of chaos and darkness. All the people of the virtual universe, I have saved you. It is time to repay me. The weird stack of sounds, the army of virtual soldiers who had been protected from great casualties because of asylum, showed enthusiasm in everyone's eyes. The next moment, the army of virtual soldiers was even more violent, and desperately rushed to the few people in the divine universe. Among the only few remaining, only Sword Unparalleled, Lao Zun, Bloodwave and others still have a battle. Everyone's body was stained with divine blood, adding a bit of sadness. Qi Ting slowly closed his eyes. His thick and powerful divine power had already dried up, and it was necessary to explain here. Second brother, it seems we can't go back. Qi Gong grinned, and a terrible wound in his left arm kept bleeding. Taking a deep breath, Qi Ting whispered in a secret voice, "Don't talk, it'll explode for some time for you. You try your best to leave this place." Qi Gong heard the words and was shocked in his eyes. When he was about to speak, a phoenix that cleared the darkness seemed to clear the sky from above 9 days. A dash, Zhang Yi then fell like a giant phoenix from the sky, and 9 roots wore the dazzling flame in the air with the tail feathers that destroyed the sky. Countless flames fall, and even weak forces can burn. Roar, Hong Zhong's deep scream roared and stunned eternity. Even if it didn't seem to be in shape, the repressive ancient bloodline made everyone tremble. A red dragon floating in the broken void surging in the chaotic darkness, with dense dragon patterns refracted on each side of the scales. The shape of the red gold dragon is really too big, just a dragon claw grasping it, just like a giant pillar of the sky. Chapter 46-23. Rumble. Nearly 1,000 star monks rushing forward were dodged, and were instantly crushed into blood mist by the giant claws thrown from the broken void. The fire came, and the phoenix fire, like the sacrifice of the cheekbones, just burned along with the imaginary force emitted by each Shusher. For a time, the extraterritorial battlefield turned into a fire domain. Behind that giant phoenix covering the sky, tens of thousands of phoenix descendants rushed to the battlefield. Each handsome young man was naked, vibrating the fire wings behind him, and rushed to the virtual camp. With the appearance of the dragon that seemed to be born with heaven, tens of thousands of dragon descendants rushed to the battlefield. The proud Xinhua of the dragons spreads the shattered sky, and each of the dragon's descendants is at the top of their feet, rushing into the army of Su Shi with a steady pace. A one-sided situation emerged, with nearly 20 invincible supremes entering the Dragon Clan and more than 20 invincible extremes entering the Phoenix Clan. The power of the most ancient blood in the divine universe is unparalleled. In the same realm, there are no advantages at all in the six marks and the traces. Seeing this scene, even the calm Jian Wushuang, his eyes were reddish. King Zhejia also moistened his eyes and laughed loudly. Bloody Supreme and Giant Axe Tianyin are all tears. Lan Lan smiled slightly, and then fainted in the cold arms. Qi Tinky, a total of 2 people, gave a strong hug. At this moment, those dragon and phoenixes who are almost vengeful don't seem to be so annoying. Aihong is everywhere, and even the 6-marked virtual lords are rapidly dying under the attack of Fengqi, the ancestor of the Feng tribe, and Longdi Linhe. The 2 fused bodies were trembling at this moment, and the fury would almost ignite him. He paid an almost unbearable price for this war, the death of nearly 1,000 traces of virtual respect, the demise of nearly 56 traces of virtual respect, and the burial of hundreds of thousands of starred virtual priests. As a great protector, he wanted to destroy Jian Wushuang and took off his head as a gift for the return of the virtual god. But everything is wrong. This outpost failed from the moment the dragon and phoenix joined. In his mind, the expressive eyes that swallowed the tissues before leaving were reappeared. He finally understood Yan's eyes, but everything was late. "Bite one, I will kill you." The irresistible violent anger vented, and then shouted the word retreat. All the soldiers who fought hard in the fire domain eventually fled hurriedly, leaving more than 200,000 wreckages. This battle of tragedy also ended with the joining of the Dragon and Phoenix clan. Looking at the permanently irreparable broken void and the countless broken arms, everyone was silent. A tear embodying all emotions of Jian Wushuang finally fell into the dark void. "Master of the Warrior's Palace, we won, we won." Bloodwave Supreme whispered softly. Jian Wushuang said nothing in silence, watching the countless corpses covered with void burst out. The Dragon Emperor Linhe, who turned into a humanoid figure, carried more than 10,000 dragon descendants, and Shenbu came to the front of the sword without double sides. He stopped talking and eventually arched, "Wushuang Gong Zhu, the dragons are late." Feng Qi, the ancestor of the Feng tribe, took a stunned glance at the emperor of the River Lin, and also brought more than 10,000 sons and daughters of the Feng tribe. After returning from the loss, Jian Wushuang slowly shook his head. "No, none of you have come late. The main sword of the Palace of Life Jing Wushuang is here. Thank you to the 2 races, and you will be rewarded today." On the battlefield outside the territory, there are only a few people remaining in the Shrine of Life, while solemnly arching their hands. "Everyone is lucky, follow me to rest in the base camp for a while." Jian Wushuang barely squeezed a smile. Linhe Longdi and Feng ancestors promised. Then the Blood Pond Supreme was responsible for picking up and welcoming more than 20,000 dragons and phoenixes into the base camp. Qi Tinky, 2 brothers in total, also had complicated eyes after seeing the figure of Linhe Longdi. Sure enough, as his father guessed, he did not die. Qi listened silently and returned to the base camp with his team. Life Shrine disciples in the base camp were also severely damaged. There were originally more than 9,000 Shrine disciples. At this moment, there are only less than 4,000. If it is not for the protection of the old barrier, I am afraid during the war, all the temples of life will fall. Utilizing the power of good fortune, Jian Wushuang opened a dormitory that was large enough to accommodate tens of thousands of people behind the giant hall. In the cold and dead domain, Jian Wushuang took a black mountain and carried his body back to the extraterrestrial battlefield. He carved it out with a tailored Excalibur, and eventually cut that Montenegro into a monument. It was a monument without words. There is no handwriting on the monument, and it can reflect the figure cleanly. After carving this monument without words, Jian Wushuang set it up not far from the base camp. Then, sitting cross-legged in front of the wordless monument, there is only Lao Zun behind Jian Wushuang. He did not bring anyone out. Lao Zun is like his shadow. He will never take the initiative to speak, but will stand silently behind him. For 10 days in a row, Jian Wushuang did not change any posture, and the insignificant inscriptions reflected his and Lao Zun's motionless bodies. The King of 9 Calamities, Supreme Bloodwave Supreme, Great Axe Supreme, and Heavenly Supreme Supreme, came to Wuzi Steel in turn in these days and stood behind Jian Wushuang. In front of the giant palace, Lin He Longdi looked at it all, and some things in his heart were firmly unconsciously. Behind the Lin He Dragon Emperor, 2 calm bodies stood side by side. Secret voice came into the ears of his 2 cages. Remember what I said. To this day, until my death, I will always make an alliance with the Temple of Life. It belongs to us, and he will never forget us. The 2 calm figures did not hesitate and promised. And Fengqi, the ancestor of the Feng tribe standing with the Emperor Lin He Long, has both fear and anger. Damn it, this old thing, it really isn't dead yet. The Kirin tribe is weak in the base camp, and there are only 2 brothers of Kirin Chi, so they can't see or bother. The 2 brothers can't keep their eyes closed and concentrate on healing the injury. After more than 1 month like this, Jian Wushuang sitting in front of Wuzibi slowly opened his eyes. The meaning of the wordless tablet is known to everyone, but no one flinched. As early as the moment when he stood still in front of the wordless tablet, everyone was dead, fighting endlessly. Maybe time will go back, the universe will reincarnate, and even if everything is done will be swallowed up by the unknown that is so long as to die, but they are not afraid. Maybe one day all of them will lie under the inscription, but they are not afraid. What they are most afraid of is that after living or dying, all the people of the divine universe will lie under this inscription. Chapter 46-24. Leaving in front of Wu Bei, all those who are closer to Jian Wushuang vaguely feel that something has changed. Maybe it was perseverance, maybe cold-blooded, maybe it was gradually losing the compassion in the heart, but no one could say accurately. Thinking again and again, Supreme Bloodwave still said, "Wu Shuang Gong Zhu, you have nothing to do, please take a break." Jian Wushuang shook his head, and the tiredness deep in the pupils was covered up. Anyway, the dragons and phoenixes have been in the extraterritorial battlefield for more than a few months. I can't neglect them. After that, Jian Wushuang brought everyone back to the base camp. The Lin He Dragon Emperor, who was sitting still with his eyes closed, woke up first, rose and arched. Long River has seen the master of Wushuang Palace in Lin He. On the other side, Feng Qi was shocked when he heard that Lin He Dragon Emperor had fallen to the face of Jian Wushuang. You must know that the pride of the dragons is famous in the entire divine power universe. Except for the gods of the universe, even the remaining semi-ancestors are probably not able to get the slightest face in the dragons. Is there any weird deal between them? Feng Qi's brows were frowned, her mind suddenly turned down, and she didn't hesitate to take a step forward. Feng Qi has met the master of Wushuang Palace. You don't need to be polite. Jian Wushuang nodded and walked into the hall. In this World War I, the Shrine of Life fell to 60%, with only a few swords and swords left in the Supreme Divine Realm. It is already insufficient to be stationed outside the battlefield. Jian Wushuang showed this situation to the 2 dragons and phoenixes, and the Emperor of Lin He took the road. The Lord of Wushuang Palace need not worry. The more than 12,000 dragon disciples brought by Lin He will be counted from the moment they set foot on the outer battlefield, classified as the master of the warrior's palace. After waiting for Jian Wushuang to speak, Feng Qi also said, "Wu Shuang Gong Zhu, my Feng tribe also has more than 10,000 disciples at your disposal, and my Feng tribe has prepared meridians for warming meridians to quickly improve." Xiangwei's Phoenix Breath. Looking at the 2 secretly fighting against each other, Jian Wushuang felt helpless, but still arched. Thank you for the great ancestors of the 2 ethnic groups, and they helped at the most critical moment. Lin He Dragon Emperor stroked a smile, and later said, "Wushuang Palace Lord, although the battle in the extraterrestrial battlefield has subsided, but according to the style of the virtual universe, it is likely to make a comeback in the next period of time. What is your plan?" Jian Wushuang heard that, and said the plan previously made again. After the words were finished, Lin Halongdi nodded. Wushuang Gongzhu means that the alliance is now divided into two parts. One part clears the imaginary forces stationed in each star domain, and the other part is responsible for guarding the cracks? Jian Wushuang nodded his head. Not yet speaking, Feng Qi took the lead. Feng Qi is willing to bring the children of the Phoenix family with the master of Wushuang Palace, the group of miscellaneous people who flatten the empty universe. Lin Guanglong Emperor Yu Guang glanced at Feng Qi and arched. Everything is sent by the master of the Wushuang Palace. Jian Wushuang no longer speaks, and a large number of virtual soldiers stationed in the divine universe are like a bomb that can be detonated at any time. If they are not removed as soon as possible when the virtual breaks from the seal, the consequences will be disastrous. And he had a vague feeling that time seemed to be getting closer. At this moment, the two brothers of the Kirin tribe, who are sitting with the dragon and phoenix, are embarrassed. They are also ancient and glorious tribe. At this moment, there is not even one thing that can hold their hands, and they are directly compared to the other two races. Second brother, otherwise let's show it? Qi Sun's secret came into Qi Ting's ears. Kirin twitched at the corner of her mouth. What do you mean, before the two of us are all dressed up and down, can we offer our clothes? Qi Gong scratched his head and was about to speak, and suddenly realized that the Chuan Sun stone in his arms began to get hot. Reaching out to take out the unique stone of the Kirin tribe, a violent divine power was stirred up from it, attracting everyone in the temple. Listen, Gong'e, please call for help. The chaos spring under the Hongdu starfield is cracked. I have been to Hongdu starfield and the ancestors of the Qilin tribe have exchanged sword Wushuang, and I heard that the slightly panic voice was Kirin ancestor Qishan. Accompanying the sound of Kirshan's panic, there was also a weird empty spirit like a whale sucking a tsunami, and the listener swayed. A total of two people, Qi Tinky, hit a spirit at the same time and didn't speak. The messaging stone seemed to be unable to support it, and it broke apart. In the hall, only that weird ethereal sound was unconscious. The Linha Dragon Emperor and Feng Qi frowned at the same time. Immersed in countless chaos period of the semi-ancestors, their control and perception of the breath had already reached the top. And the breath coming out of the messenger stone, they did not even notice what kind of power it was, weird and extremely powerful. The two men, Qi Tinky, couldn't sit still for a while. After Xiang Jian Wushuang arched his hand, he wanted to rush out of the hall. Wait a minute, I will go with you too. Jian Wushuang called them. Kirin hesitated slightly, then nodded, and for Jian Wushuang's half-ancestor strength, it was easier to deal with the next thing. This seat also went together. Chaos Spring's eyes cracked. It is important to reseal it. Lin Halongdi stepped forward and straightened, then stood behind Jian Wushuang. Go to this seat too, and one more person will have more strength. Feng Qi came quickly. Qi Tinky both looked at each other and did not dare to say anything, but nodded. After deploying the base camp outside the battlefield, Jian Wushuang took the lead in urging the spacecraft. In the extraterritorial battlefield, the semi-ancestor level supreme sits in the town, and the dragon and phoenixes guard it, and there are not many crises for the time being. The three giant engines with absolute semi-ancestral strength stood on the head of the universe boat, and the two of them were bitter, and it was not a blessing or a curse for them to gather together in the Kirin tribe. Howling wind hunted in my ears. Jian Wushuang squinted his eyes lightly, then turned to look at Qi and heard, the chaos spring that is sealed under Luodu is what is it that can cause that panic? Kirin pondered for a moment, then slowly said, not many people are really clear about the chaos spring eyes. Even our Kirin tribe knows nothing about this, only knowing that it has only cracked once since the initial division of chaos. The cracking at that time directly caused my Kirin tribe to die out. Nearly 10,000 ancestors and grandchildren died, and then they were sealed again. Is there something sealed in the eyes of Chaos Spring? The sword had no dignity. Kirin shook his head and said, unclear, until the moment of the closure. My father didn't know what it was, but later told us that Chaos Spring Eye is the weakest and only place in the entire magical universe. The weakest point, the only pole, what would it be? Jian Wushuang whispered softly, and a vague sense of bad beginning began to come to mind. Chapter 46-25. Linha Dragon Emperor and Fengzhu Fengqi have been frowning frantically. The thing under the Luodu star field of the Qilin family is sealed with a chaotic spring eye, which is known to both the dragon and phoenix families. It is also because of knowing that we know the importance of Chaos Spring Eye. Nearly reaching the top of the universe, they have already begun to understand the law of divine power. Naturally, they know that the universe is not a vast dome that encompasses countless astral fuckingdoms. As early as the moment the universe was formed, the ultimate condensed convenience is the pole of the entire universe, which is the weakest place. It is called the Chaos Spring Eye by the Kirin tribe. No one knows what is in the eyes of Chaos Spring. Even the Kirin clan who guards the eyes of Spring has never thought about half-searching. At this time, Linha Longdi, a pair of muddy eyes began to clear. His gaze turned towards Qi Ting, and he finally said, "Dare to ask, when was the Chaos Spring Eye cracking for the first time?" Qi Ting Yu Guang glanced at the Emperor Linha and sneered, "You had forgotten the good days you picked yourself, now? Didn't you just provoke the war between the three races?" As if a thunderbolt exploded in his mind, the Emperor Linha trembled slightly, holding the railing with his palm to prevent it from falling down. The Emperor Linha seems to be beginning to understand that his father, the ancestor of the Chaos era that has disappeared for a long time, should disappear into the eyes of the Chaos Spring of the Kirin tribe. Since then, there has been nothing in the spacecraft, no one speaks anymore, everyone's face is thoughtful. With full acceleration, the spacecraft arrived in Luodu, the Kirin tribe, in just 1 month. Before approaching, Jian Wushuang felt a strange invisible energy hovering above the sky. The divine power in the Bodhis meridians began to restlessly, and Jian Wushuang felt inexplicably thirsty. Then a few people looked at each other, and each urged the divine power in the body to fly to Luodu. Only Lao Zun, who had been half-opened and half-opened, opened his eyes quietly, and his dark eyes stared into the distance. "Have met the young ancestors." The general officer who guarded the city saw Qi Ting and his party, and flew forward hurriedly. "Quickly take me to see my ancestors." Qi heard anxiously. The general officer of the Kirin family glanced at Jian Wushuang and others, then lowered his voice slightly, panicking, "Young ancestor, the situation is a bit wrong," and the cracks in Kuan Yin's eyes began to grow. "What else would it take? Hurry up." Qi listened anxiously, and his body immediately swept deep into the Luodu star field. Jian Wushuang glanced at the strange atmosphere on the sky and then swept deep. Luodu star field, the extremely dark and desolate central area, at this moment one side is almost the size of an abyss pit with stars, and is spouting strange energy out endlessly. At the same time, fine cracks radiated slowly around. Nearly 8,000 children of the Kirin tribe are surrounded around this abyss pit at this moment. The unicorns of different sizes emit colorful hum, seemingly doing their best to seal the town. The ancestor of a Qishan with a golden armor is closest to the pit, and the giant Kylan treasure appears to growl, seemingly struggling with some kind of power. Stepping into this area, Qi heard a conscious shout in this situation. But when Qishan turned his head subconsciously, Qilin Baoxiang was instantly dim. Boom! A huge amount of weird energy howling wind emerged from the sky under the abyss pit, directly broke through the repression, and completely converged on the sky. All the descendants of the Kirin family stepped back and suffered different internal injuries. The next moment, the abyss pit quickly collapsed, and a star-sized Senran skull looked out from it. The extreme breath that reached the top and stirred the discoloration of the star field instantly swept the entire Luodu. Jian Wushuang's heart was terrified, and he immediately urged majestic power. Feng Qi turned directly into the heavenly giant phoenix, as if facing the enemy, looked at the head in the abyss. Only the Emperor Linha, who stepped backwards, almost fell to the ground. The Senran skull that protruded from the abyss is a dragon head. Everyone looked pale. With that bone dragon's head breaking through the seal, the entire body of the sturdy bones tore the abyss and lay across the sky. The indescribable horror has even surpassed the pressure brought by the virtual god. That bone dragon, which is larger than the entire Luodu star field, has exceeded the rules of the divine universe and cannot exist at all. But right now, it is lingering over the entire Luodu star field, and the dark breath oozes out of each of his bones, as if only one claw can put the entire Kirin tribe into an endless place. Come on! Qi Shan burst into tears, and the bone dragon was extremely powerful, making him never think of resistance from the beginning. All the children of the Kirin tribe did not hesitate, and each urged divine power to flee. Feng Qi directly transformed into a humanoid shape and fell to the ground. Not running fast yet, are you waiting to die here? Feng Qi said anxiously, and stretched out his hand to hold the sword Wushuang and fled. However, Jian Wushuang reached out and held Feng Qi's hand, breaking free little by little. Are you crazy? Are you waiting to die now if you don't run? Feng Qi was already anxious, and in her opinion, it was already a death-seeking behavior to shake her ancestor, not to mention that it seemed to be beyond the ancestor's existence. Jian Wushuang shook his head slowly. I'm gone, and the magical universe is over. Feng Qi could not help but exasperated. Who do you think you are? Even if you can hardly shake the semi-ancestor, it is less than 1/10 of the ancestor. Not to mention this big guy, you are not saving, you are seeking death. Jian Wushuang was unmoved. Okay, you are willing to find death here, my mother is not with you. Feng Qi stomped her feet and turned into a phoenix to the distance. Taking a deep breath, Jian Wushuang looked at the old man behind him. Senior, can you help me? You kid, you really got me in trouble. Yu Sai came from Lao Zun's mouth. The hood was slowly pulled down, exposing a six-skin-like cheek. This universe is very restrained on me, but it is enough. After the words were finished, the black water ripples surged from the foot of Lao Zun. Facing the white bone dragon that hovered above the sky, he slowly stepped into the air to meet him. Jian Wushuang also gave birth to the extreme power. The purple Sichuan word between the eyebrows has become extremely shiny. Linha Dragon Emperor looked at the dragon on the sky. While the old tiers were vertical and horizontal, the power of the semi-ancestor peak had been inspired. The black water scepter settled in the void, and the ripples like ink touched the eyes of the bone dragon directly. The next moment, the huge bone palm tore the sky, detonated with inches, squeezing towards Lao Zun. Tianmin extremely stupid. Splendid dignity and divine power spread out, unmatched divine power suppressed at the same time. They are tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.